Coffee houses, clubs, and neon lights. I rock the people my way. Working my way, coming back to you. Working my way, coming back. Take me home tonight, not wasting any time. Highway 95, engines on overdrive. From town to town, and in between, I see you in the morning light. New York, Boston, Philadelphia, LA, I still see your face. Buses roll, the distance grows, but I remember you're just a dream away. Working my way, coming back to you. Working my way, coming back. Take me home tonight, not wasting any time. Highway 95, engines on overdrive. From town to town, and in between, I see you in the morning light. Light on as I drive on, singing our song. Keep the light on as I drive on, singing our song. Take me home tonight, not wasting any time. Highway 95, engines on overdrive. From town to town, and in between, I see you in the morning light. Take me home tonight, not wasting any time. Highway 95, engines on overdrive. From town to town, and in between, I see you in the morning light. Take me home tonight, not wasting any time. Highway 95, engines on overdrive. From town to town, and in between.
And good afternoon, folks. Welcome to What Are the Odds with Barnes and Baris. I am Rich Baris, your co-host, your humble co-host at People's Pundit. Thanks for joining us. It's Monday. I'm a little bit fired up. Robert will join us soon. Robert is Robert, as you all know. Listen, I had an issue over the weekend, but I've been dying to say this. So let me get this in before Robert gets here. For those who, because I'm having these private discussions with people and trying to explain this to them. For those who don't have any government experience, and Robert is a lawyer, so he'll be able to understand what I'm saying and speak to this more when he gets here. This is how you know Joe Biden, because the number of executive orders is unbelievable. This is how you know Joe Biden is not in charge, folks. He's not steering the ship. Somebody is steering the ship, but it's not Joe Biden. All right. And how do you know? Because of the number alone of executive orders. It is way too many executive orders for any president to review and consider and read on their own in any meaningful way whatsoever. All right. You cannot crank out that many executive orders without knowing, knowing full well what they entail, what their impact will be, what implications they'll have, the political considerations, the policy considerations. He doesn't have a clue. So the joke I made last week talking about how, he was going to read the first one. You can go and look at the video yourself. And they were just basically like, nah, just sign it. Don't worry about what the hell's in it. He has no clue what's in the executive orders. He doesn't know He is doing what he's told because I don't think we've ever had a president with his cojones in a vice as much as Joe Biden has to the status quo. He has no choice. Let's entertain for a moment. Let's entertain for a moment that he's still lucid, that he's not deteriorated the way we have all seen him deteriorate. Let's just even entertain that for a second. Point is, his cojones are in a vice, and he couldn't say anything if he wanted to. And here's Robert is in. He'll join us in a second. But when he comes on, I'm going to ask him about it. He'll know what I'm talking about. The amount of work that goes into a single executive order, folks, is incredible. It's a lot. It takes a lot of people. And then the president, if he wants to have any input, if he wants to review it in any way, you cannot crank these things out like that. The truth of the matter is, they had people already reviewing them. Every K Street pig who wants to run to the trough, when Joe Biden got in the White House, the minute he did, it was just a matter of who gets to go first. But believe me, he has no idea what the implications of these executive orders are, because no human being could read 40 plus executive orders and examine 40 plus executive orders. We're not even in February yet, folks. We're not even in February. Let's bring in the great Robert Barnes. Robert, what do you have to say about this? This is my point. My point is simple. This is how you know Joe Biden is not at the wheel, because there is no possible way. You're a lawyer. You know what I'm talking about. As anyone with political experience, there's no freaking way, Robert, anybody could read all of those and meaningfully reflect on what their impact would be and make a sound decision. There's just no way. It's way too much.
Well, I mean, I enjoy a show called The Gaggle with Peter Lavelle and George Samueli, in part because they bring an international perspective. People can look it up.
Great show.
Yeah, it's great fun, great people. But they have a sort of an international perspective because they follow leaders all around the world. And their immediate reaction to what took place with Biden in the first 10 days or so is that it's obvious this guy is grandpa, that they bring out, they say, hey, grandpa, sign right here, grandpa. Now go back. It's probably nap time, grandpa. We'll bring you some tea. We'll let you play with the dog a little bit later. And that's basically what this is. Because, I mean, he even admitted they caught him on a hot mic. So imagine if they'd caught Trump on a hot mic saying this. It would have been 24/7 news on CNN. And for every unlucky airport observer, at least that's going away finally, that got stuck in an airport. But where he got caught on tape saying, what am I signing? I haven't read this. That's old Uncle Joe. I mean, this is a crock at multiple levels. Of course, his family can't help themselves. As soon as he's in, his brother's running around saying, hey, my brother's the president. You guys got to start lining up and filling up the coffers, everybody. And Joe has to say, come on, everybody, don't be so blunt about everything, okay? Everything they accused Trump of doing, that he was using the presidency to enrich his family when he impoverished his family by pursuing the presidency. If anything, Biden is going to do. It's confession through projection, confession through accusation. And they are doing it. And think about it. They accused Trump of overusing the executive orders as a dictatorial power. Joe Biden himself called it a dictatorial power just a couple of months ago during the election season. And now he just set a record for the number of executive orders in record time that any president has ever issued.
Not even close. Not even close, even, Robert. Nobody will ever top this, or it will be years.
He's on pace for over 6,000 executive orders. Over 6,000. This is insanity, especially from a guy who clearly has no clue, as he's on the hot mic, knows what he's signing. So they accused Trump of using the presidency to enrich his family. It's Biden who is using the presidency to enrich his family. They accused Trump of being in bed with foreign powers that are adversarial to the United States to help him win. It's Biden who is in bed with China to help him win, which we got to see this weekend. And I'll never pronunciate the country well. My view is if you have a country, it should be able to be pronunciable. But
Myanmar.
Yeah. Is that it? Was it?
Myanmar.
Myanmar. What the heck?
Coup.
So it's like my Aunt Martha or something. My Aunt Martha. I got to figure out a way to spell that country. Sorry to all the people that are from that country. Just can't. I just look at that name and I'm like, what the heck? There are Russian names easier to pronunciate. Or Polish in Wisconsin. I mean, that was like Wisconsin, I went to law school there. Half the people I had to come up with a nickname for because there was no way I was remembering to pronunciate their names. Budzinski, different versions. Great people, but I just couldn't do their name. But does that military coup happen without China's blessing? I don't think so.
No way.
And what's China been doing ever since Biden got in? Just to prove what a weakling there is, flying those planes over Taiwan, flying the planes over our U.S. military carriers in the seas, saying, look, we know you elected a senile old man. We elected him. Our people got caught on camera bragging about it right after the election at one of the conventions. So what they accused Trump of doing is what they're guilty of in terms of corruption, in terms of foreign collusion, in terms of dictatorial use of the executive power, in terms of idiots in the White House. They accused Trump of being, it was a contradiction. 1 minute he's a genius, the next minute he's an idiot. The guy who is a complete idiot is clearly Joe Biden. I mean, he is, he may have been, he was never that smart. His mommy told him he was smart when he was 7. Don't worry, Joe, you're smart. You're not as stupid as we all know you are, Joe. Don't worry. That's why Joe had to cheat his way through college and plagiarize his way through law school, because everybody knew Joe was dumb Joe. And Joe was sensitive to the fact that he was dumb. That's why Trump kind of ribbed him on it during the campaign. And now you got a dumb dementia candidate as your president. Isn't there like a lid put on every night at like 4:30, 5 o'clock? I mean, it's absurd.
A 2-inch dusting, Robert, for Washington, D.C. A 2-inch dusting, and the man is home by the fireplace with his feet up? You have to be kidding me, whether you like Trump or not. And I thought George W. Bush was a worker because, for those who are not old enough to remember, Bill Clinton did not walk into the Oval Office till like 10:30 in the morning. He was a lazy party animal. And then George W. Bush gets elected, and he's like up jogging at 7:30, 7 o'clock. He's in the White House at 9. The residency light went on at the White House under Donald Trump at 4 o'clock in the morning. Just so everybody understands. 4 a.m., 4:30 maybe. It was bing, the light's on. It's time to get up. That, by the way, I am convinced that's one of the reasons why they hated him so much in the media too, because they actually had to work. These are very lazy people. I'm serious. They're very lazy.
Well, that's why they love the pandemic. They get to stay home all the time.
That's right.
I was there. When I was up there at one of these cabinet officials' chief of staff's offices, and they were trying to manage all the federal employees who were always coming up with new excuses to not even work from home. That's how lazy these people were, with their fat salaries and easy jobs, and as long as their politics is on the right side, nothing of bad consequence happens to them because we don't have a real marketplace. Which right. So all of the things, the doom and gloom they predicted about Trump. Hot-headed conflicts, foreign collusion, domestic corruption, overuse of executive authority in a dictatorial manner. Joe Biden has done all of those in just 10 days flat. It's extraordinary. Of criminalizing and weaponizing the political process in order to go after one's adversaries after you've won an election. They said Trump was going to do that. He didn't. Biden already has. And the Democrats already have. So it's in not only including what happened with and is ongoing with the impeachment, but with things like the over prosecution and imprisonment without bail of people that did nonviolent minor offenses on January 6th, including people that simply did a meme 4 years ago, like Ricky Vaughn, who's now facing 10 years in federal prison for a meme that almost nobody retweeted and liked. Because a few people, probably as a prank, texted in response to it. And realistically, should you, I'm all in for people voting, but if you believe the meme spread by someone in a Trump hat that you could text your way to voting rather than vote in person, maybe you aren't, maybe that isn't really fraud on the election. Maybe it's fraud on the election if you vote. If you're that dumb. I'm sorry. But that's where we're at. So all the things they said Trump was going to do, Biden's already done.
Yeah,
Biden did do. And I don't think now, of course, we'll get the bogus. The gaslighting on the polls is just going to be off the charts. They're going to pretend they weren't wrong all election. They weren't wrong in 2016. They weren't wrong in 2020. Many of them were wrong in 2018.
Yep.
Many of them were wrong in 2014. That didn't happen. And that Joe Biden is just one of the most popular presidents ever. I'll be curious to see whether we get any honest polling data. You notice they've already shifted. The first thing they did is they scratched. Rasmussen kept their metric, but everybody else scrapped not only likely voters. Many of them are not even using registered voters. They're going to all adults.
Just adults.
Which is insane. I mean, 10% of those are people who can't be citizens because they're here illegally. And have been notoriously unreliable polls. But they saw during the Trump era, polling all adults will get you a very Democratic-friendly audience. So they're going to shift to that like mad. They already are. What was intriguing was, despite the narrative they wanted to build, that Trump was badly damaged by what happened on January 6th. I went in and did a deep dive of a lot of the internals that have been published by people that at least use relatively comparable metrics, like YouGov and some others. And if you look at Trump voters and Biden voters, self-described Trump and Biden voters, because that's a good filter for folks out there, just to remember, one trick of the polling game is to change who you poll, so that you create a different answer that's not reflective of the actual answer. And there's a lot of that going on, hence the shift to all adults.
Georgia? You see the Atlanta Journal-Constitution poll was an outrage. It was a disgrace to polling. Disgrace.
All these were
plus 10, D plus 8 in Georgia. Come on, man.
Well, YouGov was predicting a near double-digit win for Biden all year. Yeah. So the only thing I was curious about was the internals. And by the way, their current internals, to give you an idea of how untrustworthy the top line number is for the YouGov poll, the top line, the YouGov had their demographics, their weighted demographics is that Biden won the election by 27 points. That's the gap between Biden and Trump vote. That's what a crock these polls are. But so I just looked at the internals. What did Biden voters say on January 5th? And what did they say on January 19th? And what did Trump voters say, self-described Trump voters, on January 5th and January 19th in terms of approval of Trump? His numbers didn't move at all. Yeah. They didn't even budge a point.
That's exactly what we found. Robert, it is not possible for anybody who is a non-Obama circa 08 figure. It is impossible. And I mean that,
everybody what that was
+%.
What that was like. I mean, Obama was celebrated in ways no one has ever been celebrated in American media history. Nobody got the hagiographic treatment. Maybe hypothetically George Washington, but I mean, otherwise nobody got what Obama got. John Kennedy didn't even get what Obama got. Yeah. FDR at the peak of his fireside chats didn't get what Obama got. Eisenhower didn't get what Obama got. Nobody got it. This is the great savior of America. Number one. Number two, he's a moment in history. Absolutely. Number three, he's a black man and with foreign ancestry in part with his father. So that was perfect from a Democratic perspective. But basically, this guy was sold as Jesus. I mean, the coverage of him was off the charts, just going in. And he inherited the best situation you possibly could, where the other guy is blamed for a financial collapse, blamed for a disastrous war, and blamed for multiple scandals involving those wars and involving the bailout of those financial institutions. You couldn't have been gifted the easiest and the best honeymoon ever. And so you expected him to be in the mid to high 60s. And there used to be a honeymoon in America because the media used to respect that. They quit as soon as Trump won. And so the idea that Joe Biden would be anywhere near Obama is a sign that the poll is a crock, that it's a lie, that it's a fraud. But it's not going to stop them from doing it. But you see Rasmussen, I think Biden's already starting to trend under 50. So their very first one, Robert, they were like, listen, we know you're polling nationally for somebody else. And hopefully we'll be back with the Epoch Times real soon, but for national numbers, because I don't really like doing national unless somebody hires me to do it, and it was 47%, Robert, for a client, 47%. And they knew I was polling. So Biden was always in the mid 40s in personal approval.
Absolutely.
He was never this beloved Uncle Joe. Can't wait for Uncle Joe to come over and fondle the niece. That is who we were.
But it's true there. And we're way too, look, folks, just if you think Robert and I are BSing you right now, if you're old enough to remember, think back, even Republicans during the era of during the election and inauguration of Barack Obama, they were proud of the moment. At least they were like, you know what? Oh, yeah. And I hope this guy succeeds. This is a very different scenario. What I think is going on too, because they know they're bad at what they do, the pollsters, they're using response biases and social biases in their favor now. So they now know, and they're quietly, they won't tell you or acknowledge it. They know why they got it wrong. They know there's a serious problem with polling. They wouldn't have gotten it right even if they knew how, because I'm convinced now most of them are just intentional. They intentionally screw up, but right now they're taking it to a level that is beyond. In fact, I tweeted a publicly what was wrong with the Georgia Atlantic Journal Constitution poll, and I said, and if the pollster has a problem with this, he's welcome to come on the YouTube channel and we can talk about it, but he won't, because he knows I know exactly what happened. I can bury him in demographic groups in 30 seconds. These people are not picking up the phone. We're polling Orange County too right now, have been for weeks, and I'm not going to get into why, but have been for weeks. Republicans have started to slip on their self-identification edge there, but it is still a relatively Republican area down in. It's like the last Republican bastion over there. I'm not surprised that Michelle Steele, Harley Ruda all went down, and Michelle Steele, I'm not surprised with any of that. Without those areas, but Orange County is like the most Republican area in that area. We can't get Republicans to talk, Robert. They're furious, man. They don't want to talk, and they're using that to say that the electorate is more Democratic, and that is textbook response bias. And to prove the point, it goes both ways. Democrats, for you Democrats listening out there, you didn't want to talk when Mitt Romney destroyed Barack Obama after the first debate. Mitt Romney was never ahead of Barack Obama. They just got more Republicans on the phone that poll. That's it. That's called response bias. And now we are compounding that, which was a problem you and I talked about for months before the election. A problem for years leading up to this. And it's now compounding with social biases. And I don't even know. We're going to need a new term, Robert, because it's like they don't know it's me calling, right? They don't know it's me sending them an email survey or whatever. They just see a pollster and they hate you and they don't want to talk to you. So, it's almost impossible to test negative messaging, because Republicans take it as an offense and they abandon the survey, which means they'll hang up or just click off the link like, screw you, you liberal pollster, goodbye. And they hang up. They don't know who I am. They don't know whether you're Richard Hart or Richard Baris. They don't know, so, and I would love for one of these chumps to have the courage to come on and talk about this, because that was an abomination of polling, Robert. Biden is up well above water, double digits. Trump is below water, double digits. Impeachment's like plus 15 popular. That's crazy. Yeah, that is nuts.
What's amazing is there's just no coming to terms with it like they had to in 2016. Yeah. There's going to be no real autopsy of how it even got worse this cycle. There's a few serious, liberal-leaning analysts who really believed in the polls, who are trying to do some analysis in their social media space. But that's about it. Nobody else is. Nate Silver's not going to. He's going to lie to the world. I mean, the biggest bet on Predict It was betting against Nate Silver's media polling average being correct in favor of Joe Biden. Yeah. So and it was off on average by 4 points again. Yeah. So and that's with everything that happened in the election. So,
they got larger samples, Robert. They got larger samples, right? So this is like, I feel almost as if at this point they know, and really,
absolutely. And what they're doing with Biden,
CNN, Robert,
when they put out these numbers, you could know whether the polling was deliberately, materially, just gaslighting by because you knew where Biden was supposed to come in. Biden is supposed to come in the low to mid 50s.
Yep.
Given he got a little bit of a honeymoon from the media, but not from the country. That you would expect. Okay, he'll do better than his personal approval
52, rating. 52. That's what I was expecting myself.
And that's where he came in initially with Rasmussen. Well, he was up and down with Rasmussen. There was some noise, but around 50%. A couple of others had him at 52, but a bunch of others had him at 55, 57. And the other thing they're doing is they're asking the question in some way to drive down negatives. So what they're not doing is highlighting the top line. They're saying, wow, Biden has a plus 20 approval rating, because they're sticking 20% of the country and don't know, which they would never have allowed that to happen during the Trump era.
No, you get leaned. That's it.
Of course.
And everybody knows those don't knows or disapprovals that are afraid to say they disapprove.
Yes.
I mean, everybody knows that.
When it's when it's Joe Biden for president, I mean, now if you're doing an all adult poll, it could be don't know because, I mean,
You're not paying attention.
Half of all adults don't vote. If it's an all adult, because many of them are not citizens, many of them don't care to register to vote. They have no clue what's going on unless it's a TikTok star. They have no idea. Many of them don't know even who Joe Biden probably is. So, that's who they're polling for opinion. These people, the reason why Rasmussen said they were going to go to a likely voter model all the time is they said it allowed you to compare one year to another year.
Yeah.
Rather than having registered voters, which can be very different than likely, and then all adults, which now 30 years ago, all adults that Gallup was using was fine because only 4% or so of the country were not citizens who could not participate in the election.
That's right. That's exactly
Today,
right.
it makes no sense to use all adults, and they all know it. And so to do so without anybody raising an eyebrow shows how all these data analysts, the Nate Cohn fraud who got exposed, well as New York Times polls. Remember, Iowa was going to flip, folks. Ohio was going to flip. Biden was going to romp in
4 points, 5 points, 2 polls, 4 and 5.
Oh yeah, ABC was it 17 points in
Wisconsin? Yeah, 17 but
points.
Iowa, Ohio, these were going to Biden. Remember that, folks. Nate had them going to Biden. And by the way, the only one that was close was Iowa, Robert. Ohio was like even 4 points and 5 points.
Losing to his fraudulency the second. That's Joe Biden's official moniker, his fraudulency the second, in honor of Rutherford B. Hayes, who's his fraudulency the first.
Yeah.
So Joe Biden deserves the moniker, the title, his fraudulency the second. Even though he won the election with honest voting to help the YouTube algorithm, I still made money on election night. And people who followed the predictions that I had given out on this show made money. Now, in part, that was because of the House and the Senate, but it was also because of the margins in all these states.
We're wrong. Yes.
He wasn't supposed to win Ohio by the margin. I mean, you were an underdog bet that he would win Ohio by more than 3 points.
Oh, yeah.
Money. You bet on Iowa that he'd win it by more than 3 points. You made big money. You bet that he won by more than 2 points in Florida. You made big money.
Texas and Florida, too.
4 points in Texas, you won big money. On just those 4 votes, people made tons of money because of how much money was stacked on those bets. Whereas you could only place one bet on the presidential election. In those individual states, you could bet yes or no, which will transfer us getting into shorting stock. We shorted the Biden stock in Texas,
and the
Ohio,
Democrats in the
Iowa,
House.
and Florida. And you saw the consequence and then predicted that Trump would still hold North Carolina. He did. And just the wins from those, plus the House and the Senate pickups, holding Maine, not losing all the other seats that they predicted would be lost to the scope and scale that they did, led to, in fact, predicted had to change their metrics.
Freaking Maine. Can we show that again one more time? Freaking Maine, 2nd Congressional District. This is one I can't get over. I mean, I just can't get over this.
It's a classic microcosm. It's a working class northern district, voted for Trump by 8 points in 2016. They all said he was going to lose. Look at Quinnipiac. Wrong by 17 points. 17 points.
And they have the nerve, the audacity, Robert, the audacity to continue to poll without a serious reflection, period. And this is why, though. Look at who APOR invited for the annual post-election, for those of you who don't know, the American Association of Public Opinion Research, every 4 years when there's a presidential election, they have an annual one, but every 4 years is a big one where they go and they say, how did we do? And then they usually make excuses for themselves, or at least in recent years. It used to be years ago, they'd pat each other on the back and say what great jobs they did. But now it's been nothing but excuse making time. This tells you everything about where they're at. CNN, Robert. They hired CNN's pollster
CNN decided to do their own polling with SSRS, for those who don't know, as the data collector. Got rid of Opinion Research Center because they didn't like what they came back with in 2016, and their numbers were absurd.
Look at this.
I mean, they were off.
Ballot.
Exactly. And that's similar to what they had in 2018. Weren't they off by like 8 points? They were predicting some 15, 16 point crazy win.
Yep.
That was ridiculous. Harry Enton, who writes for them, while he was yipping about Rasmussen, which had a different metric they were testing anyway, he was ignoring that CNN, his own company, had the worst poll on the House of anybody.
That was my response to him crashing on CNN. Not just him, but all of them. Philip Bump at the Washington Post. Like, how dare you? How dare any of you look at your own organizations? And Fox News was like, we're going to not mention Rasmussen that much because they did so badly. Look at you. You missed and they polled very important states. Indiana, Missouri, Tennessee. I mean, just down the line.
Oh, yeah.
And by
way
the way,
wrong in individual state Senate races, way wrong in a range of other races, forecast things with the House that were premature. And then in 2020 came back to bite them because Democrats didn't add seats as was being predicted. Now the Fox data guys that you called out before the election now have finally been fired because of how bad everything is. The amazing thing is all these guys were all clueless, both in the media and the political class, clueless about what was happening in the country.
Yeah,
of which GameStop is a bridge to.
We should bridge into that.
The bridge to it. But what it shows is Fox is now moving people all around. They fired their whole data team. Why? Because they didn't understand that Murdoch doesn't run things anymore.
And they heard
without
it.
Roger Ailes there to direct them into a populist direction, that they are completely unmoored, and that attacking Trump was a disaster. Turns out putting Paul Ryan on your board is a good way to lose ratings.
And Robert, they get no credit for hurting at the last minute in Ohio. I polled, that's when I went nuts on them. We were polling Ohio the very same time they dropped that Biden +3, and it was Trump +10. And I was showing people how badly I had to manipulate the data to get Joe Biden within 4 or 6 points. It had to be, I mean, really, it was beyond incompetency. You couldn't, an idiot, brand new newbie pollster would have seen a Trump romp coming a mile away in Ohio, Robert. No chance. They manipulated that. I am straight
they had to.
accusing them of doing that.
And what they didn't understand is it turns out bashing Trump is not popular.
No,
on that. From January 2016, when Trump decided not to participate in that last debate and wage war on Fox, their brand approval rating fell 50% in 2 weeks.
Yep.
So I mean, that's what got him in line. That's when all of a sudden Roger Ailes was like, okay, well, we're going to be pro-Trump here on out. No more anti-Trump. That's it. Finito. We're going to move. We'll allow a few anti-Trump voices like Neil Cavuto and Shepard Smith, but it's not going to be the main voices anymore. Everybody chill out and let's get on the Trump train. Yep. And they thought now when Trump lost and they were building towards making that event happen at Fox, they could maintain it. And Fox, which on average has either been equal to the combined viewers of CNN and MSNBC, or on average could be as much as double the combined viewers on CNN and MSNBC, now has often fewer viewers than either CNN or MSNBC since the election. They are in the greatest danger for their survivability in history, and I guarantee you they're on their knees praying to Allah in one direction and Jesus in the other, that Donald Trump doesn't create his own new media network, because if he lent his name to a different one, Fox could be dead overnight, just like the Republican Party. I mean, I think the other thing that, before we get into GameStop, what Trump revealed is that if he started a third party, I've been trying to tell people, is like a party these days is only its brand and its voters. Access to the ballot's not that hard. There's enough ways to get access to it now for a third party with any popular support. In fact, Perot's party hinted at this in the 90s. You could just replace the Republican Party. Like, always people are like, oh, no, you shouldn't form a third party. It will split the conservative vote. Nah, maybe you just form a third party and you just killed the Republican Party.
Robert, they're killing themselves.
They're like, hey, my choice is the Trump guy, who has a shot, or this Republican who's just a wasted vote, which would be beautiful to see, by the way. To see these old Romneyite Republicans be stuck with wasting their vote. If they stick with their voting for that part of the party, when they've been doing that to kill third parties for 50 years, that's a wasted vote. You have to vote for one of the corrupt. It's either Bush or Clinton. Good luck.
Look at the list of senators that was put out today that are going to the White House to meet Joe Biden. When Donald Trump was president, only deep red state Democrats that were left in the Senate were willing to meet and work with Donald Trump. Mansions, the testers, right? That was it. you have deep red state Republicans racing to the White House to screw over their voters with Joe Biden. They're doing everything in their power. And I've been all over this country trying to talk to Republicans over the last 2 months. They called me up. They want to know what I think. I'm trying to, they don't listen. They don't listen. I'm like, listen, you're not getting this. You don't have a constituency. You don't fight for your people the way that they fight for theirs. It's that simple. Get your head out of politics for a second. It's human nature. Nobody wants to follow the coward or the loser. Nobody ever followed the loser in the battle, Robert. All right. Not without inspiration. Right. So that's why people are like, how could somebody follow Trump for so long? He did this, he did that. Who cares? He fought to death for them. That's all that ever matters.
And the thing is, basically what I've been telling people is there should be two options in the strategic map. One is to try to take over the Republican Party, but recognize that's been tried for over a decade now, starting with the Tea Party folks, and it's mostly failed. So if the elected officials continue to slap the populist wing of the party in the face, it's time to slap the party in the face and start a new party. And people say, oh, that just means Democrats always win. No, the goal is to replace the Republican Party en masse with Trumpish candidates.
That's a corny way out, Robert. That's a corny cop-out. It's a corny cop-out.
And what we saw with the polling that came out, Patriot Party is more popular already than the Republican Party. And so what would happen in these states is it isn't how many people would really stick to voting Republican if on election day they know doing so only helps the Democrat. Wouldn't it be beautiful to force a lot of when the McCains and the Romneys forced everybody to swallow their garbage just to make sure Obama didn't win? That was the pretext. Wouldn't it be great to force the McCains of the world, the Romneys of the world, to have to vote for the Trumpish candidate to avoid the Democratic winning? But practically speaking, that's how that plays out. What people are doing is they're looking at these old third parties that have hardcore support that could never get out of single digits.
Right.
That's not Trump's party.
No.
Trump's party is, if they realize this party has as much a chance to win as the Republicans do, what will happen is sometime what's going to, that the Trump people aren't going to abandon the Trump party. So what becomes the logical choice? The logical choice becomes time to abandon the Republican Party.
And those that would remain in the Republican Party, they're already starting to eat each other. Look at what is going on with the Lincoln Project right now. I mean, Molly is absolutely right.
Everybody knew that about John Weaver for over a decade.
Yes, I was just going to say that. Laura and I were talking about this earlier. People knew about John Weaver for years. And when last week, because I knew what was coming. I knew the story was coming because I knew he was working on it. But everybody's like, oh, that was a homophobe statement. Okay. I'm telling you, first of all, even as a 40-year-old man, if I wasn't married, I would have no place hitting on young college women that just got into college. I mean, really, to me, I would look at them as everybody's different, but to me, I would look at them as not mentally developed and mature. Of course, they're physically mature, and I'm sure that's the great, a pretty good night for a 40-year-old man. But you don't pursue younger people, Robert.
And there's two other.
It wasn't just college people.
Well,
it wasn't.
Yeah, I would say two other problems. One is he was Weinsteining it. Yes. He was using his access to positions of economic power to try to get people to do things for him.
Right.
And then second, yes, as you note, they weren't all 18. So he was grooming. He was grooming young boys that were in their, one of them at least 14 years old. And there were rumors about this because the rumor was part of the reason why Kasich dropped out early was there rumors about him and Weaver related to this behavior. And so the people, I mean, look at who Weaver was close to. He was close to all these bigwigs in the Lincoln Project, Republican political consulting class. It's going to make the man whose name can't be mentioned, the IW is the network that he's on. Look more and more true when it's like, hold on a second. So you mean to tell me that all of these Republican political class people who have run pretty much every Republican campaign since Atwater died, that they all end up in connected or part of or friends or and covering up for a Weinstein type guy, including underage activity in an Epstein-like way?
And this was a man who ran around Ohio, not once, but twice. But in 2016, it was a bigger deal. He ran around Ohio trying to get, and in many ways succeeded, parts of the apparatus of the state Republican Party to abandon Donald Trump and help Hillary Clinton carry the state of Ohio. Just so a lot of people, I'm sure, don't know this backstory. But he was loyal to Kasich to the end. And I mean, even after it was well into Trump's candidacy, I mean, into the election itself. And his main argument was Donald Trump should not be the character of the Republican Party. This is something that always bothered me the most, Robert, because this idea that Donald Trump's character was like subpar or something is a fabrication. It's a myth. He's just open about it. The rest, it's like, when did we start to pretend that politicians have good character? They're just good actors. There's a difference, man. There's a
he had
difference.
New York character, which doesn't always rub people the right way, but it's no less character. It's just a little more blunt and crude.
It's open and crass. Yeah.
I mean, in New York, they consider that honesty.
That's what I was just going to say. Where I come from, because I'm from a borough over, that's honesty. That's being open, you know? I mean, that's really the truth of it. It's like,
if you say New York the way Laura says New York, then you're a New Yorker.
New York. Yeah, it is.
Exactly.
I've tried my years and years to fix that. She keeps saying, you're trying to put your polish in yourself. But certain things like coffee, I can't stop it totally, you know? But, and when like I get excited,
Bostonian, once they say "ka," then you're like, or burr. Oh no, how do they say? How they say beer?
Beer.
Like
That's it. In the South, it's burr. I like a burr.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the South. Yeah, burr. Yeah. I thought you meant New England beer.
Oh, my favorite Southern word I probably shouldn't say on this show, but it's a SUM. Yeah, it's a great combination of a couple of things. That fit Weaver and some of these other people.
Yeah.
I mean, but these guys were the key people that ran W's campaigns, ran McCain's campaign, ran Romney's campaign, ran Kasich's campaign, ran the Republican, a lot of leading senators' campaigns, leading congressional members' campaigns. What does this tell you about the culture that was being inhabited up there? That this was okay, that this was green lit, that this was approved, that this was seen as normal and something to hide from the world. And the left knew all about it all along. Like I said, people were telling me about it in 2016 about Kasich and Weaver's combined activities. And so it's like, okay, this is like Harvey Weinstein in Hollywood. Everybody knows.
And they did know Karl Rove had an encounter himself. And there was, I don't know if it was the New York Post or the New York Times. They smeared him years ago for what
the Atlantic.
He did. It was the Atlantic too. Okay. Because for those who don't know, he was at an event, a Republican event, John Weaver, Karl Rove was there. And a young man, I think he was like 18 or 19, I don't know, but he was a younger Republican. And he was more than just, look, I guess in today's age, heterosexual guys have to get used to being hit on by homosexual guys. It happens. I get hit on by homosexual guys all the time. I don't know why. They love me. I don't know what it is. But you just have to be used to that. But this went beyond that. And he said it was like, I mean, look, okay, you hit on me. That's not, I don't go that way. And
Lincoln. These are the same Lincoln Project connected people that got rid of Milo on the public stage.
That's right.
Because Milo didn't have a problem with him being the victim of that kind of behavior.
Right. Yeah.
And now it turns out that's what maybe that's why they were paying so close attention to it. Maybe that's why they understood the significance of it. I mean, it's amazing. And these guys had the goals to be sending Giuliani and other people defamation letters over the weekend.
I know.
Can you imagine? What reputation? And there's rumors about Steve Scalise. There have been for some times. Rumors about the gentleman from Florida have been for some Rick Wilson for some time.
Yes.
So this may be this may break down the dam of a lot of information about those guys. And credit to people like Ryan.
Ryan
really broke it.
Ryan
credit to Jack Posobiec and Mike Cernovich, who just hammered. They have understood the social media game probably better than anybody else on the right.
Absolutely.
Because they'll find a story and they'll just beat the heck out of somebody with it.
Oh yeah, and until you see it in real time, like until you see them do it real time, like when you're with them or something, then you're like, you really understand some of the stuff that comes out, that especially the stuff that triggers people. It's completely intentional. They do it on purpose, and it has a goal. It typically is get somebody to pull the mask off or entrap them or get them to say something, which is what Ryan did well, by the way. Ryan did this well with the help of all the Jack and Mike. They knew they were going to say, you're a homophobe. He's a gay man. He's allowed to hit on other grown men. But everybody knew all along it was not just about younger, but still adult gay men. And in the end, look, they even, tried to trash Karl Rove for trying to handle that situation with less finesse than I would have. I mean, look, it doesn't matter what your political persuasion is. If you hit on somebody and it's a no, man. It's a no, and you move on. You don't
harassing
batter somebody.
Employing the tools of power against people.
That's right.
And this was underage activities. And aside from the fact that, again, these people are on their moral high horse about.
That's my point.
Trump paying off somebody because it exposed an affair he had like 12 years before he ran for president. And that was horrendous. He belonged in prison and had to be impeached for it. And these are people who are doing this regularly and routinely. Yep. Given the out in the open public behavior that they're doing, that they're harassing people, that they are leveraging employment access and means of power as tools to do so. And it's a combination of, and then underage Weinstein, Epstein behavior. There have been rumors of trafficking involving Weaver and some of his folks. So at least at some level, the probability, I mean, that goes back to John. People forget about John Maynard Keynes. People should read about what old Johnny Boy was up to back in the day, why he liked to go to the Mediterranean, whether, in fact, how many of those people were underage and frankly,
what the hell is with this, Robert? What is with people of in the always ruling class being deviants like this?
Well, it goes to, who the world seems completely normal if you've seen it through the filter of Alex Jones. And the reason for that is Jones's core belief has always been that people who seek and successfully obtain power are disproportionately dangerous people.
Yeah, I agree with that.
What motivates them to seek that power and to achieve the success of getting it is more often than not always, but more often than not, a very dangerous psychopathological behavior that will show up in other areas. And that's why he's always not surprised and is always highly suspect that they're involved in this kind of deviant behavior because it's all about power. I mean, it's no surprise there's been, more missing kids and other issues out of District of Columbia and Hollywood than almost any other places in the country. Yeah. It's because, it's the same reason why there's a systematic issue in the priesthood. It's because in elementary schools and people in people who like to be clowns, frankly, John Wayne Gacy wasn't that big of a shock. Well, I'd say those clowns were freaks from the time I was 4. I was like, putting that just my random bias and stereotype.
My daughter both. She's the hell kind of a grown man. What the hell kind of
a movie It to know something is wrong with that guy. But a lot of them are just funny, nice, just to be clear. But the reason is it's who wants power over kids, who wants access to kids. It's just like crime. It's what I was taught when I was in New Haven and I was trying to figure out where to live off campus. And the cop was saying, look for opportunities for crime and stay away from those neighborhoods. And it goes, do you have places without, where we have easy back alleys? Do you have places that aren't well lit? Do you have places that have a lot of abandoned houses in the area? Well, the same lie, I taught this to my daughters, the reason why apartment buildings are more dangerous than private homes. It may not seem that way, but it is because of stairways and other places like that within a building that create think like a criminal and you can figure out what's dangerous. Well, think like someone who has these kind of deviant behaviors and you can know where they're likely to end up. They're likely to end up in places where they have power over younger people. In Weinstein's case, it was just power over young actresses. In Epstein's case, it was the ability to traffic in young people that are underage, including overage, but vulnerable populations. And in Weaver's case, it was access to both. You want access to power. You're a young guy who wants to achieve some degree of political connection and recognition. Then that gave him the tools to do so by being in that gatekeeper. So same reason why the church has had certain problems. Because, where else do you, if you're someone with that mindset, where are you going to go? Well, being a priest with having control over altar boys, there's going to be people that have the wrong mindset are going to end up there. It's like bad cops. Why are there going to likelihood there's going to be more bad cops proportionate to the population in terms of sociopaths and psychopaths? Well, if you want power over people, what better place to go than to be a policeman? So that's why 80% of the people who may go into police work may be motivated by the best intentions, like 80% plus of people go into the priesthood. But you're going to have a disproportionate number of your authoritarian sickos who seek out those jobs. Just like they seek out, like, that's what I said, like when people would say, look at youth ministers in the Baptist church, you find disproportionate number of accusations. And I was like, look, it's not because it's something about being a Baptist that makes people deviant. It's who is seeking that job is someone who disproportionately is going to come from that group. And that's why you have to have a higher risk ratio alert system in place. But the scope to which the media, the editor of the Daily Beast, all these liberal news sources had been covering it up. Now we really know they've been covering it up for more than a decade, because it appears they knew about this about Weaver dating back to John McCain's campaign, that Weaver was a key component of. And it tells you, I mean, what's Alex Jones's view of the world? There are a whole bunch of them, a bunch of crazy deviants who like power over children, and they disproportionately occupy positions of power. And you had Epstein, over the last 2 years, and now you have Weaver, and you're like, wow. And Weaver was integral. Weaver was not some outlier. Weaver was the center of almost all of this. Almost all of these other guys that are part of the Lincoln Project got their jobs through connections and favoritism by Weaver. So it's important for people to understand. He's kind of the Karl Rove of the Lincoln Project. He was this kind of successor to Karl Rove. And apparently it had so much juice that even Rove couldn't do anything about it. So it tells you what that city really is like. Maybe that city should be locked down, but not for the reasons it is currently. I think we may have lost Richard. He'll probably be right back. Yeah, Richard will be back on here in a second. So, I mean, that's the nature of who these people are. That's the Weaver story. That's the Lincoln Project story. That's going to have a lot of bad names associated with it now. A lot of bad innuendo is coming. But it shows how the system really operates, and it shows how the system can meaningfully malfunction and misfunction. So we'll see how it goes. Oh, hush, hush in the meantime. That's funny. I'll do some... cigars. This is a... which one is this? Oh, yeah. This is a version of... I can't even read it. The label's so small. Well, it's that one. To be honest with you, I can't read it. Yeah, that's interesting. Is Mike going to run for governor? I hope so. The last time they got a successful recall petition was the one that got Schwarzenegger elected. And and so I think what was it? Maybe 100 some people ran for governor, including some porn stars and other people. So it's a great opportunity because it's a compressed campaign, one ticket. So that's how that works. So Newsom will be at has a recall, and they can vote for him, or rather than vote yes or no, they can vote for a bunch of other people. And so that's how Schwarzenegger got into the governorship in the first place. And so I think the same method. So it would make sense if you want some political recognition or whatnot, or to get some ideas out there. It would make sense to run. Favorite Scotch is 50-year Macallan. O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson was innocent, but I'll explain that in a longer, detailed story elsewhere. Would you recommend? Yeah, I would definitely recommend running for any level of office that you feel you can run for. And that's at every level: town hall, city council, county commission, education board. Some people have election boards. Actually, some of them you can get elected to directly. Others nominated for. So there's a lot of different offices that a person should look at that to contribute to, because that's the way democracy really functions. Is ordinary people go out and participate in the political process and get elected to positions of power. And it doesn't have to be the presidency to have meaningful impact, as this last election showed. It was a lot of local officials that dictated the outcome of this presidential election. All right, Richard will be back in a second. Yeah, the glove. Yeah, if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. And indeed, the glove didn't fit because he was innocent. Oh, you're right, Schmidt, not Scalise. Thanks for that correction. That's an important correction. How's it Pelosi still in office? That's a good question. Precinct captain, yeah, that's a good position to have. I won't comment on what Karl Rove is or is not in relationship to the Weaver story. You can investigate that for yourself. That might be a future hush hush. We'll see. It'd be an appropriate hush hush. Let's see. 2024 is going to be like the successor wars to Alexander. That's probably true. If Trump is not part of it. Who did it? Who did the OJ case? Yeah, that's for another day, another story. I'll tell you this, it wasn't one person. To the strongest for your lowest smart move. Let me see some of these. Hold on a second. DeSantis would be pretty good. Noem would be decent. Noem is kind of a mixed portrait. Very good on the lockdown. Where she is on some other issues is still an open question. That's why there's really not an easy natural successor to Trump currently, frankly. That's kind of a weakness of the movement, one could argue. And we'll see from there. But let's see, what else? Yeah, Noem is great for the Midwest, potentially. There's ruminations that on trade and war, she might not be good. So that's the key to filter out what her real positions are on those issues. We're almost there. Oh, yeah. Laura says, yeah, almost back. Benji Shapiro. Ben Shapiro comes from the neocon conservative establishment. So, there's a reason why he was never Trump throughout 2016. People forgot that because he's done a very good job of trying to erase that in part. But he took efforts to get Hillary Clinton elected president. That really should tell you everything you need to know. But beyond that, he's generally pro-war. He is generally anti-trade protection positions. He generally has a naive view about economics, a very sort of like the economics professor Dean Thornton from the movie Back to School. He recently, for example, is highly critical initially. He's modified his position since, but he started out very critical of the GameStop people. Aha, I think we almost have Richard back. Hello.
Someone's Bluetooth, man. Just like, I guess it was like Bluetooth Google Chrome or something. It said Bluetooth from an iPhone, Google Chrome. I'm like, I didn't think Bluetooth could work with. So I use Apple, but Chrome, it does not run well on Apple products. You have to do it for streaming. But it was like a thing flashing my screen saying somebody with an iPhone was connected. I don't have Google Chrome on my iPhone. And then everything went blank. Uh-oh, Robert. Let the conspiracies fly. I turned to Laura. I'm like, turn off your damn Bluetooth, and she's like, I don't have Chrome on here. I don't have anything on. I'm like, uh-oh. So I was listening, though, as we were going. And I would double on that, what you said about Noem. She's too much of an unknown factor right now. We don't really know where she is on especially wars.
And she's given off Nikki Haley vibes at times on those issues in the past.
That's right. Yeah. And yes, it was, but I knew who you meant, and I meant to circle back and say it was Schmidt. You were talking about Schmidt, not
Yes.
Yeah.
I can always see Schmidt because he was part of the people who betrayed Palin. And a lot of this goes back to 2008. You could argue the beginning of the populist establishment split. It was building before then. Pat Buchanan was the first strong indicator of it. But the depth of it was the Palin-McCain split, where the people who are supposed to be helping Palin, like Steve Schmidt, like what's her name, who's now on MSNBC with a sweet contract. what a crock that was. The person helping to run Palin's campaign.
Yeah.
What's her NBC person? What does that tell you about how many traitors these people had around them? Palin
Not
was
Amanda, the other one, right? Not Amanda. What's the other one? It's the other one. I know who you're talking about, though. Not Amanda.
Her first name was Nicole something another.
Yeah, that goes to show you, though, how out of the loop she. And another reason why they hated this guy, because they really it was like they were threatened directly financially by this man. He was a direct threat to their grift, and they acted as if character had anything to do with it. And these people, of all people, making character arguments. That's what always drove me nuts.
Look at the ridiculous checks
they got their criticism.
And they got it from interesting places. Like, I'll just say, the stories about Weaver and David Geffen being a big contributor is kind of interesting, given stories about old David.
Yeah.
I lived in Malibu for a long time. So did Geffen. So just leave it at that.
If I was Guns N' Roses, I wouldn't want it to be my label anymore.
there were people that had theories about why exactly Geffen built that nice big motel there in Malibu.
Yep.
Maybe it wasn't for out-of-town guests. Also, if I was any of those donors, given some of their, like David Geffen's histories, I would be really nervous right now where this Weaver story is going to go.
Yeah.
Because as it keep going, why did they give all this money to a bogus group that mostly pocketed the cash? That had no role on the election.
I think it's criminal how much money they took and put in their own pockets, Robert. It's criminal. Yes, they ran ads in Florida. We saw them, but
how did those work out?
Exactly right. And they, by the way, I remember this. They thought hands down they were going to flip this state. And so did the people who were giving them money. And they're not bad necessarily. Not everyone who funded against Trump was bad. Like, there are some Republicans that I still know that, or they think they're Republicans still, that just really bought it. And it's not that they don't even buy them. They don't even agree with them on policy. They just bought the crap. They bought the decency nonsense, because when these people show up in their living rooms, they put the best face on they could possibly put on. And they want you to, when they leave, to have the impression that, all right, this guy's the real deal. This girl's the real deal. These people are the real deal. And they're really, we're almost like kindred spirits in the fight. That's the way they want you to perceive them. So I don't really blame
pure grifters. They've always been pure.
They are. It's a grift. It's a total grift. I don't really blame them for falling for it, but at the same time, it's like, after 4 years and after all this stuff that comes out, there is an I told you so that is well worth it. I mean, well worth it. Which brings me, I guess that could, because if there's no place in the Republican Party for these people, there is also, and we focus a lot on the Republican Party, but if you're a Democrat right now, or a former Warren person, or a former Bernie person who bought their crap, all right, and then you decided Trump is just such a horrible nightmare, and I was not talking, but messaging with Kurt Schlichter about this, and it's entirely true that they used wokeness as a way to distract those people from actually having substantive debates on where Trump was on the issues that they actually cared about. Because there's so much overlap in populism, they were terrified. And you could read the Podesta emails even before he was president. They were terrified his celebrity would bridge that gap, and that they were done. It was over if he could do that. So they decided to go uber racial on him, and then uber wokeness, right? And this giant social desirability bias campaign. But there's also, with everything that happened, you have the Reddit revolution. It's only going to get worse when it comes to the exposure of what Biden's administration is. He's a corporatist Democrat. He's corrupt. I mean, he is not going to take up the mantle, right, of the little man and the little woman. And I mean, any idea that he ever was, you just duped yourself into believing that nonsense. Made in America. What was the campaign he stole directly from Donald Trump? Right? Was it Made in America or something like that? And that was never going to happen. And we actually did speak to people in the Rust Belt who thought Joe Biden would be pro-manufacturing, American manufacturing.
Now they're going to see he's not pro-working anything. It never was. So where do these people go, Robert? If the Republican Party, here's what I'm wondering about. If the Republican Party is the Republican Party we've just been talking about for an hour, they're not going to go to the Republican Party. So it's the more I think about it, the more I wonder, and oh my God, I'm going to hear it from people after I say this, but the more I wonder if it really isn't better for Trump to take, because for people who don't know, he's getting off to a great start with directing where this party nominates people. All right. He's going to be a force because the money is flowing to Trump and not the RNC. That's what I'm hearing. Everybody's lining up to give money to whatever Donald Trump does, right? 30 million somebody, right? That somebody told us $30 million is going to end up in his war chest like that. I mean, I can't help but to wonder, Robert, if it's not better for him to just take these people and go.
Well, he should definitely. I mean, my advice has been to be independent of the party machinery entirely. So even if he keeps his focus within the party, all of his fundraising should be separate from the party. It was a mistake in 2016
the joint committee
in 2020 to let the party run things. That's how his campaign committee in Georgia did not lift a finger to help him in Georgia after the election. And that's what cost the Senate, by the way. I saw Mickey Cow, who's become an utterly useless pseudo quasi-intellectual hack, go on and on about how terrible Trump was because it cost him the Senate in Georgia. No, Mickey, your friends cost the Republicans the Senate in Georgia. They decided to not lift a finger for Trump, refused the advice they were given to make the recall and the recount the actual the second election, and to make it that way. If they had done so, they would have won. Trump did everything he could. They limited how much Trump was there. They limited how much Trump was involved because they believed that Trump was the albatross and not having him around would help them. So Mickey Kaus is out there pitching nonsense and gibberish. Ann Coulter and other people hold up Mickey. Mickey's a moron when it comes to political analysis. Just stay out of it, Mickey.
And only to call him 48 hours before the election. And I know because I got a call saying, what do you think? Should he go? 48 hours before, begging him to come. Begging him, can you circle back? How many? I mean, these people
and even then, they only do it in one part of the state. I mean, this was an easy thing. They should have run on electoral contest challenges and let Trump barnstorm the whole state with them. And it would have, the state legislature would have taken more action quickly. Governor probably would have changed his mind. Secretary of State would have still played his games, but it would change the dynamic entirely. Just camp out in Georgia, let Trump campaign county to county to county to county to county, make the second election about the first election of the president, by saying the only way Trump has a chance to win on January 6th is if you turn out and vote for these two Republican senators on January 5th. And it was a heavy lift because both of these people wanted nothing to do with Trump, both Perdue and Loeffler. Both Perdue and Loeffler were caught on a Zoom tape talking about how excited they were to work with Biden.
They'd have been there. They'd have been there on that list today.
Of them, and this might be the best transition to GameStop, both of them were big inside traders.
I know.
Both of them used their Senate position to enrich themselves. So, Mickey, that's your problem in the Republic. Donald Trump isn't your problem, Mickey. The only reason why there is a Republican Party even alive today is because of Donald Trump.
Yeah,
Mickey needs to stay. Quit reading the Washington Post. Quit reading the New York Times. Don't read the Washington Examiner. Don't read the Wall Street Journal. Get connected to real Americans, Mickey, that you pretend to represent, and recognize that the reason the Republicans lost the Senate is because of the Republican Party is institutionally corrupt, and even Trump couldn't salvage and save them from themselves.
And then they run ads against. They have the stupidity to get caught insider trading and then clean themselves up. Clear it. Get everybody scratch each other's back, and then run ads about socialism.
Yeah, did they live in a 1980s world? That's why they still think Reagan matters. God bless the old man, but no, he doesn't. No, most people don't even know who he is anymore.
Right.
And it was during the Cold War era where it was much easier to unite the populist and establishment wings of the party. That day is gone. It's been gone. I mean, that's what Pat Buchanan 92 was all about. That ship had sailed.
Yeah.
And the only thing, and that's why a bunch of Republicans and independents wanted to walk away from the Republican Party in 1992 and elect a midget billionaire with big ears.
Yep.
Before Obama big ears, you had Ross Perot big ears. And how are they going to vote for that kind of billionaire when nobody knew him from one interview on Larry King? Because they were that fatigued with the institutional Republican Party. They wanted nothing to do with the Bushes of the world. And what was Republican? And who did the Republican nominate after that? Bob Dole, a Bush, a McCain, and a Romney.
Yep.
They barely won in 2 of those elections, thanks to the temporary events of 9/11 that they misused and discredited war one more time when they used patriotism as the guise to do so, a lie to get us into the Iraqi war. And that's why there is no Bush Republican majority anymore. Doesn't exist. The only Republican Party that has a future is the Trump Republican Party. If it is not the Trump Republican Party, then the Republican Party will go the way of the Whigs. And people forget, we've studied the history. The Whigs disappeared overnight.
Yes.
I mean, they were big, and then they didn't exist.
He
The
could
exact same
vaporize
thing can
them,
happen to the
Robert.
Republican Party.
I couldn't agree more. It doesn't have to be this paint. He has so much, because we've been trying to estimate it, and I'm gonna continue this, like put it in real numbers. He has so much power among the real Republican base, not the fake one the media polls think they're polling, the real Republican base. He could vaporize them overnight. They would be it's possible they could be like a 10 to 15 million vote party. I mean, he could kill them like that.
Absolutely.
So
that's what the polling showed. And why not? I mean, I think the plan right now, and it's a good one, is a twofold plan. Put into motion have as a backup contingency plan the third party.
Yeah.
Spend the next 2 years trying to take over the Republican Party. See what happens with impeachment. That will be assuming there's no conviction, no disbarment, nothing like that. Then try to take over the party in 2022 and purging it of these impeachment voters, limiting some of these people who wouldn't challenge the election, seeing how much of the party you can have control over at the congressional level, how many real allies you can get in the House and the Senate and in governorships.
Yep.
And in other attorney generals and other secretaries of state positions. And if that doesn't go the way it needs to go in 2022, if the establishment strikes back, if you will, and holds power, it will be the end of the Republican Party.
They're done.
Then he will shift to a Patriot Party type party. If they convict him, that's guaranteed to happen.
It's over.
It'll just be punishment and payback.
It's done.
And it will happen naturally. I mean, you've been out on talking to people. I was talking to people in Southern Utah last week. I haven't seen this level of anger. I didn't see this level of anger during the financial crisis.
Never.
I didn't see this level of anger at the peak of the Tea Party when Obama was talking about, and his buddy Bill Gates were talking about death panels.
Yep.
I mean, people forget that's what enraged people the most about Obamacare.
Yes.
It was the idea of government care, but it was things like death panels. They were literally just going to go start whacking grandma and poor people, re-implement eugenics. That's what it is. Just new fancy medical terminology instead. Somehow this pandemic managed to do that. If you're a Democratic governor, I'm sure it's all coincidental. But see what happened. But the anger is off the charts. People aren't mad at what happened on January 6th. Unlike the NPR today, put out that headline. Many people leaving Republican Party over what happened on January 6th.
That's ludicrous.
No, the people deregistering from the Republican Party are mad at what the establishment did in response to January 6th.
I tried talking to that person too, by the way. I said, listen,
oh, really?
Yes. I said, listen, first of all, if you go back in history, it is very common for an incumbent president who has left office for their party to lose registrations. That it happened to Bush, both Bushes. It happened to Obama. It happened to now to Donald Trump. It is happening. It is common. But also that you have that explanation, and then you also have the idea that you're looking at this completely backward. If you go to a place like Westmoreland, Pennsylvania, you'll see people race to the Republican Party because they don't view the Republican Party in Pennsylvania is not viewed as Rona's party or any of their party. That is a Trump area. He dominates the R. That's it in that area. But in other areas of the country, there are there's still the stigma of that big business Republican Party that's corrupt, that insider trades, and they don't want any part of that after they screwed over Donald Trump. It's that simple. Yeah. Look at the Florida, Robert, look at the primary vote.
Yeah, especially like parts of Florida. You look at where they're losing Republican registration.
They'll go back to MPAs. Yes, and that's why he won.
MPAs, and it's in working class parts of the state.
And that's why he won independence in 2016 and barely won the state. He lost independence in 2020 and romped it because they were just calling themselves Republicans. This is what Nate Cohen could never figure out. I was trying to explain this to him in the Rust Belt in Florida. I'm like, you're not polling the same group of people. The independents you're polling are the ones who are no longer really independent. They're Trump through and through, and they will call themselves Republican if they don't outright change their registration. That is where these gains are coming from. They just totally in one ear, out the other, only to watch his polling, Biden +6, go down to, but Trump +3. It was over in an hour in Florida, Robert. I mean, it was in Wisconsin, same thing. And it's difficult because there's no real registration, right? So you have to infer with the voter file, and they just fell prey to it everywhere. Well, and by the way, that's a good way to segue. Speaking of insider trading,
because there's no better example of the real populist spirit out. The other big mistake they're making. I was shocked that people still believe this in the political science world. But one of the old mythologies of populism by the professional class that hates populism, the Richard Hofstadters and those types of the world, and it's the paranoid style and all that garbage. These people really believed that populism, because populism often found its surprising expression in the form of idiosyncratic political figures, that they were the creation of those political figures, hence the demagogue label and the rest.
Yeah.
That's never been the case. Going back to the original populism, the populist moment by Lawrence Goodwin of the late 1880s, 1890s, which was in response to his fraudulency the first, Rutherford B. Hayes, before our current his fraudulency the second, Joe Biden, is that populism arose in part in response to that as other things. And William Jennings Bryan rode the wave of it, but he didn't create it.
Yeah.
And this is true of populism in the South. The big Jim Folsoms, the Huey Longs, the Earl Longs, the Bookie Turners in my hometown, the big Jim Curleys in Boston. They were the creation of populism. They tapped into populism. They didn't curate it or create it at all. Least of all, I mean, I'm a Trump fan. Trump didn't create populism. Trump figured out there's this massive populist wave out there.
Yep.
I'm a great salesman. I'm gonna use their language. And when Steve Bannon first raised it with him, Trump was like, I'm a popularist too. So he spent a lot of time studying populism. It was just he understood the instinctive appeal of it because he did his market research. And how did he do his market research? Unlike Mickey Kaus, who's busy reading the Wall Street Journal to figure out his news, what Trump did is he followed the news of talk radio. He followed Michael Savage. He followed Alex Jones. He followed, to some degree, a young Tucker Carlson. He followed independent people in the YouTube space and other space. He had other people doing it. He wasn't doing it personally, and following the popular individuals on social media. And that's how he figured out what their message was. And that's why his message echoed it. I mean, that's why early on, he sounded like a version of Alex Jones. His demographics was basically Alex Jones' core audience. And it's because he realized something the institutional media still doesn't get, which is like for all the times I've been on Fox and on these other institutional places, if I'm walking around, almost nobody recognizes me from Fox. As soon as I was on with Alex Jones at all, I can't go anywhere without being, I'll have people come to my house just to work on something. They'll be like, hey, you were on Alex Jones. I mean, they don't understand the degree of popularity of Jones. I mean, there's media's own polls show 30 million Americans have a very favorable opinion of Alex Jones. So they can create whatever caricature they want of the guy. But what Trump understood was, this guy is the voice of populist America on the right. So I'm going to listen to what he's saying. I'm going to listen to what Michael Savage is saying. I'm going to listen to what Rush Limbaugh is saying. Rush Limbaugh had moved dramatically toward the populist.
Dramatically, yes. Absolutely.
Nowhere the same as he was in 2004 by 2016. I mean, he used to go on rants in 2015 and 2014 over the Republican House and the Senate, how they're just a bunch of corporatists, how they just sold out to their corporate paylords. I remember having to listen to it like 5 or 6 times because I hadn't listened to Limbaugh in like 10 years because I'd opted out of politics. And I was doing this for betting purposes. And I was like, holy moly, where does this language come from?
Very different than the Bush years, man. Very different.
It was whole rail against the Wall Street, Washington, corruption, the corporate hacks, the defense industry, how they want free labor to pour across the borders and on and on and on. And so that's what Trump was just mimicking that. So these people really convinced themselves that if they could use January 6th to totally and forever discredit Trump and all Trump supporters and voters, all 75 million of them magically overnight. And two, once you took them out, populism would just disappear. And there would be, roses it would be like 2008 all over again. With just a love of the Democratic Party and a love of institutional politics. And
they're crazy.
And they would learn to respect the royalty that is our political elites and believe the way they deserve to be treated. You will curtsy and you will bow the next time they walk through the airport. And poor old Lindsey Graham and Mitt Romney found out otherwise. They couldn't even get home without getting harangued and harassed. As they realized, ordinary people realized they have the power, not them. And they were going to let them know it right there in the airport. And Lindsey would try to pretend to be on his phone, and then he wasn't really listening to them.
And that's
him from this direction, haranguing him from the direction. The phone that Donald Trump famously
remember that?
Giving out, hey, you want to call
555?
Here's his phone number. Classic Trump. Just his populist tactics and techniques. So Trumpism, populism is here to stay. If anything, Trump kind of capped it by giving it a institutional expression that could get caught up within it. Without it, Wall Street just discovered what that looks like when you don't have Trump to contain populism. Yep. Populism will find a way to express itself, which is what the populist moment is all about. Creative, unique, fun, interesting ways to do so. And that's what GameStop was all about. But look at how revelatory it was politically that almost no Republican right out of the gate was all over this. It's like, how are you still this clueless? I mean, I don't understand why these House members and senators who have national aspirations or other political aspirations aren't doing things like this, having their own YouTube show, doing their own periscopes. That part AOC's former campaign manager got well. And it's important here. The other things, what was beautiful about GameStop, number one, it exposed that populism is completely independent of Trump and will find more creative and louder ways to express itself if Trump isn't there to express it for them. Second, and put a myth to all the illusions that taking out Trump could take out populism. But the second aspect is it exposed how institutional Washington is so out of touch that they weren't all over this from the get-go and were instead, their initial instincts was to defend Wall Street rather than defend the ordinary person trying to defend a real American business like GameStop.
Robert, what they don't get is that their failures are still there. It doesn't matter if Trump's gone. Populism arises from government failure to meet the needs of the people that they are supposed to be representing. And if you spend any time with the intellectual left, it's like real clear that they misconstrue. They think, or they'll blur the lines between what is like populist history in this country and progressivism. So there's this overlap, but they don't view progressivism like that. So
progressivism hijacked populist objectives.
That's right.
Elevate the power of the professional class.
That's exactly right.
And to the detriment of the working class.
Exactly. But they want one in the same. They want them both to be the same.
Because it was always their pretext for doing what they did. It was always their justification for doing so. So like direct election of senators came about in part as a populist area to control certain state legislatures. Progressives hijacked it to professionalize the Senate to make senators less responsive to the public.
Exactly. Couldn't have put it better myself.
Repeatedly in a lot of their methods that they did. I mean, they created civil service reform. There was a populist desire to contain the worst abuses of machine politics, but aspects of machine politics protected the working class and made government responsive directly to the people, because if your party lost, you didn't have a job. And so what did that mean? That meant if you're the postal worker, you probably shouldn't piss people off unnecessarily on your block, because maybe they're going to vote against your party, and then you're watching them deliver the mail. And so but there were always excesses, of course, too. Corruption allowed them to use political machines to suppress independent movements. Populists wanted to balance that out. Progressives come in and say, let's just have civil service reform. And what do? They created an administrative state that's completely unresponsive to the election.
And throw them some crumbs.
State come from the dual state, which all come from civil service reform, which was a disaster for democracy, a disaster if you want anybody except the professional class to run your life. or what Peter Lavelle calls the professional managerial class.
Yeah.
And they are the John Weavers of the world. Do you want John Weaver
That's
with
it, man.
with control over your kids? I don't think so. So I think, so GameStop is just a natural expression of all of because the other thing that you've understood, I've understood, some people like Steve Bannon have understood, that the establishment still doesn't understand, is that people have not recovered from the combination of what happened in 2006, 2008. The fact that they lied us into war using patriotism and a national trauma of 9/11 to do so was something that burned in a way that has never been undone. It proved Pat Buchanan right. It was one thing for Pat Buchanan to say about the first Iraqi war, that it was done for bogus, et cetera. There was some suspicions in the American public, but that was mostly a popular war. Then to see that, hey, everything Buchanan...
After the baby lie. After the baby lie. That for people who don't know.
Incubators where babies were taken out of incubators, and so on and so forth. But when they saw it at such scale for the Iraqi war, that they took our emotional trauma of 9/11 and were willing to lie and manipulate and use that to get us involved in this horrific war which wasn't even achieving strategic objectives. Independent if you didn't like the humanitarian response, if you didn't like what was happening to soldiers, it was like, this war just isn't working. It was a Donald Trump. He's like, the Donald Trumps of the world. Like, this makes no sense. But
Iraq and Iran balance each other. Leave them alone. That's because they're not. It's like academia, foreign policy academia, of which I was a part at one point. It's dominated by realism, dominated by the international state of anarchy and the idea that we balance against each other. Nobody even, there are of course people that contest it, but the strongest arguments are realist arguments, and nobody in DC practices realism, and only the idiots at the State Department and at the Defense Department and then the politicians who believe them would think it was a good idea to take two counterbalancing enemies who are killing each other every 10 years and hurt one and weaken one and make the other. So Lindsey Graham hates Iran so much, he can't stand Iran, and Iran is such a great threat. Then you should have left Saddam Hussein to take care of Iran and balance Iran and to continue to weaken Iran. Notice the Chinese haven't shot a bullet, Robert, in years. They haven't shot a bullet in decades. They are the only realist nation left on the planet. They're the only ones who operate by those the tenets. And Trump was the only he called it principled realism, I think, or so. He had a tenet for it, but it was really offensive realism by John Mearsheimer in The Tragedy of Great Power Politics. His seminal work, guys. If you love statecraft, John Mearsheimer is the bomb. Of course, there's some things I disagree with, but nobody articulated a better argument, my point. And I'm listening to Trump lay out his tenets of realism, and I'm like, he took this right from John Mearsheimer. Finally, we're really not going to be in a war, and we're gonna increase our relative power next to China. And in fact, that's what was going on until these idiots there. But to use something like 9/11, especially where it's like you just threw the Northeast away for a generation, because to use something, my wife, her cousin died, went to work one day and died in 9/11. He was Tower 2, right? Mm-hmm. Tower 2. To use that, Robert, to prey on people's fear and emotion. Is there any bigger piece of in the world to do that?
No. Well, it turned out there was a way that you could at least match it, which was to lie people into a bogus housing bubble. And then when they got caught lying them into a bogus housing bubble, blame them and bail out the banks.
Yeah.
And the combination of those two events, also the fact they happened back to back, and they happened in a broader context of the betrayals of the late 60s and early 70s in terms of Vietnam, in terms of the assassinations, in terms of the exposure of MK Ultra and COINTELPRO and what our own government was doing, a lot of which got swept under the rug because of the Cold War and the threat of Soviet Union. With all that gone, to see this was like the first time you saw your parent do something wrong, and this was the second time catching them in something worse. And at some point, you lose credibility. You no longer trust what's happening.
Yeah.
And the system managed to save itself by coming up with the imaginary savior of Barack Obama. And the reason why the Tea Party erupted in 2010, in large part, was because Obama was a traitor to that solution. It turned out that he was a part of the problem, not at all the savior he'd been held out to be.
No
And
hope
that was
for any
the
real
beginning of
change.
the
Very
Tea Party
quick.
movement was a populist rebellion, often ideologically incoherent at times, conflicting intellectual ideas, because it wasn't initially an idea that was driving it as much as opposition to the current establishment, saying the current way things are going ain't working in the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. We're done with both. It was a Sarah Palin kind of expression that, and it's never been come to terms with. They never came to terms with it. The Republican Party, Democratic Party's never come to terms with it because
they're promising to. Though,
exactly that young millennial base that was disappointed in Obama, but couldn't get themselves to criticize him because he was Jesus. He was the liberal Jesus. Did express itself for Bernie Sanders, but never got power because Bernie was allowed to get screwed over. So you have this building anger over this resentment over these unsolved injuries. And, we both have studied a lot of international conflict. If you really dig into international conflict, what you find often is an old injury, sometimes centuries old, Hatfields and McCoys, just a different kind, say between the Armenians and the Turks over a little slice of land between the two of them that blew up this year. And that's what
Loren in Europe. I mean,
it's what they nurse those grievances. And you have people that have been nursing those grievances for decades. And right now they've been nursing it for a decade plus over the fact that there was never resolution, never punishment, never meaningful reform over what happened both in the Iraqi war and that was the deep state and the war state and all of that, and what happened in the financial crisis. And the GameStop is a reflection of that. You see the people that were saying, I'm going to put my money in GameStop, even if I lose it, because I want these people I want the world to finally hear me. I want these corrupt Wall Street hedge funds to finally hear me. And maybe even the Benji Shapiros of the world saying about how, Wall Street gets together and they allocate the capital to make sure it's productive to the most efficient part. How do you still believe that? Where are you at? That is the world that you think exists. I mean, it's just incredible. When I saw him put out those tweets, I was ridiculous. This is a guy who said the FBI was really clean and ethical, that the war was really, the Iraqi war, he still believed was really moral and justifiable, that, he continues to feed the mythology they teach you in third grade. This is how our government works. The little Bill walks up.
Hologram capitalism, man. Hologram capitalism. It's not real. When hedge fund managers who are purchasing user data from an app can call that app and tell them, first of all, for the Benjis out there, a free market, it requires an exchange of goods or services and money and currency, buying, selling. There has to be two sides of that equation. They completely removed one side of the equation. That's not a free market. What are you talking about? Unbelievable.
These hedge fund guys have been making money. It's part of the myth of meritocracy that the professional class in particular likes, but Benji's part of that. And in case you don't know, his wife's a doctor.
It's the artificial aristocracy that Thomas Jefferson warned us about. That's exactly what we have right now. The artificial instead of the natural.
These people they don't merit it. I mean, when the first thing I learned as a scholarship student to Yale,
you're not smart.
None of these people should run anything. These people, they aren't special. They were just protected. They were privileged. That's real privilege, not them going around lecturing coal mining kids that they're the recipient of white privilege. Privilege is all these little Ivy Leaguer types and little college, and you're burning. There's no better testament to how uninsightful and uninformed and at a deep level unintelligent the Ivy League graduates are than Ben Shapiro. Yeah. He's someone who doesn't understand the legal system, doesn't understand the political system, doesn't understand the financial system. Gives people bad insight, bad information on all of it. And why? It's because he still believes in the myths. He still believes in the lies. He's like one of those people that said, the Supreme Court really didn't have standing, and that's why they couldn't take the Texas case. It's a made-up mythical doctrine. Completely garbage.
It's
But
a
so
bit of a
with
blind
GameStop-
faith in those beliefs, Robert. It's a bit of a blind faith, and you know it from what the research we have done together. For those who probably and they don't know, like conducting voir dire research when you're looking for jurors in a case, we profiling different groups of people and belief systems, and there's this group out there, and it cuts across political ideology. It's not just one or the other, and they have this you could probably put it better than me, Robert, but this desire to please authority and believe
they're authoritarians
the
who, in
system.
order to morally justify what they do or what they see,
Yeah,
have these myths, these
Yeah.
ancient myths that they propagate that have long since been proven false.
yeah, they don't hold up to time or scrutiny. They just don't. I mean, they completely.
And the thing is, as we both know, it's people who have something taken away from them that are the revolutionaries. It's
Yeah.
not people who've never got anything in the goal of getting something that are revolutionaries. This is what Marx got totally wrong, just as a functional analysis. He thought that you had to have an industrial society to have revolution. In fact, it was when they screwed with the peasants that you ended up with revolution, as has been true for a long time. And what happened was, and two things were taken away from people. One, their belief in patriotism being properly reflected in the governmental policies of our military hierarchy by the lies that led us into Iraqi war. And the other was all the mythologies of meritocracy on Wall Street as they saw people's lives destroyed. I mean, you read some of these commentaries of these people on the subreddit.
On the Reddit, they're heartbreaking, some of them.
Oh,
man.
absolutely. People, I mean, it's just one after the other. And they've nursed those grievances for decades. That's why they're like, well, one of my favorite now parables or mantras is never forget, never forgive, and hold the line.
Yeah.
And what they've been doing is they've never forgot what Wall Street hedge funds did to their families, destroying their homes, destroying their livelihoods, destroying their jobs, destroying their businesses. Like these lockdowns are starting to repeat. And that's why these politicians don't know what's coming for them. That's why Newsom doesn't know what's coming for him. He's trying to beg his way out of it because he's
I know what's
we were just at the day he lifted that order, man. That they were almost there. I mean, they were already at that time, they were just about to cross the threshold, and he was panicking, basically.
And they got to pretend signature matches are going to have to apply.
Yeah, notice that they're going to go ahead with those signature matches now, aren't they?
Like, well, let's be careful. Let's not yet. I'm going to be bringing suit a bunch of places across the country, including Arizona, including Virginia, saying that, hey, I want the same standards for signature matches for nominating petitions that you all said was just fine for absentee balloting.
Yep.
And watch. Well, hold on a second. Because if that's the case, tons of people will get on the ballot. Referendums will get on the ballot. Initiatives will get on the ballot. Recalls will get on the ballot that they've been able to stop by using signature match, by strictly enforcing signature match checks. So let's get back to a different standard with it. But going back to GameStop, all of these people are people who understood how the system really operates, decided to leverage their collective power to get back at Wall Street and the hedge funds by joining together. Because, you put 20 million people with $10,000 in their accounts. You do the math on that.
Yeah.
That's bigger than any hedge fund that's in the marketplace.
Robert, they drove that price up to the moon. And just so people
as long as they hold that line, they could make these poor SOBs pay through the roof and bankrupt a bunch of them, and they deserve to be bankrupted. Hedge funds have not proven to be a positive for American economics.
No. Did you see that man crying on CNBC as if he thought he was going to get any sympathy? This is a man who has destroyed the lives of, I don't even know that it can be measured. He's been like a Mitt Romney kind of guy where he comes in, looks for the weak, nice pick, rips it apart, just destroys lives and jobs. And for those who, because I see them right now, the basics, guys. When you say when you're shorting something, first and foremost, you need to know that you are betting on that stock to decline. All right. You think it's going to fall.
If you're unpredicted and you bet no on Biden getting a certain number of votes in a particular state. And the method by which you do so, theoretically, is what's supposed to happen, is you borrow a stock that's really in existence, you sell it, you say it's essentially a debt transaction. I'm going to borrow the stock for $10.
Yeah, you never own it. You
Well,
never own it.
I'll
People
give
should know that.
GameStop. They borrowed the stock at like $4, sold it at $4, and they were hoping and then what is within a certain time frame, they have to return it to the broker that they borrowed it from, because
Very
that
key right there.
Right.
Very key.
And it's within a set time frame. Sometimes it's within a certain price point range to try to cabin risk, but you can do it that way. But otherwise, within a certain time frame, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, whatever, right, you have to buy it and give it back to the broker at whatever price. And your hope is that when you borrowed it and sold it for $4, you buy it back at $2 and you get the profit $2. Your risk is unlimited. The maximum profit you can make is $4. I borrow it if you borrowed it at $4. Whatever the maximum profit is, whatever you bought it at.
Yeah, you can only be in the money.
Maybe you can buy it back for 1 penny and you make $4. On the other hand, your risk is theoretically unlimited.
Yes,
because you have to buy it back within a certain time frame at whatever price it's available at. That can be 40, that can be 400, that can be 4,000.
It could be 1,000% more than you thought it was going to be. Like GameStop.
Risk in this ever since the 90s. Kevin Phillips has been writing about this as much as anything since the 90s, when he was around and writing a lot politically. The same guy wrote Emerging Republican Majority and Boiling Point and all of those. Also wrote American Capital, also wrote Bad Money, also wrote other books like Boiling Point that partially deal with this. And his argument was what was happening on Wall Street was the sign of a declining empire that was dangerous to any constitutional democracy. And that was two things: the financialization of our economy, putting way too much of our economic wealth in the back and basically in a bunch of Wall Street gamblers, because that's what they really are.
That is what they are.
Nobody can convince me otherwise. And then second, they were using techniques of debt and leverage and derivatives that created massive exposure and risk. A lot of these guys that short the stock don't even have enough capital to cover where that stock could go.
Yeah.
So essentially, they may have to return a stock to somebody, but they may not actually have the financial means to do so. It's one of the problems with short selling. I'm not against short selling as a general principle, but it should be carefully cabined. My view is no one should be allowed to short sell that doesn't have enough leverage to cover a 1,000% increase in the stock, because that's historically has happened in the past.
Yeah, there has to be caps, Robert. There has to be caps.
If they put those limits, most short selling disappears, because most of them don't have that leverage available to them.
That's right.
The amount, and they definitely couldn't get to the point of shorting 140% of the stock. And I know everybody's explained it to me, and they're like, no, you don't understand, Robert. You need to know the Wall Street, and you need to understand the financial system, and that's totally normal. To the ordinary person, shorting more stock than actually exists in the market is not normal and is not a good sign. So maybe it is to those the people who want to apologize for it. But they've bought into their own mythologies of how they create wealth and how it's really meritocratic and it's really justified and it's really economical. I mean, Elon Musk is like, in what world do you get to sell something you don't own?
You don't own. That's always been my point of what I said. Elon Musk said that. He's absolutely right. You can't sell a home that you don't own. You can't sell a car that you don't own. So why the hell do you think? Because stock is ownership of a company. It isn't some ethereal, idea or currency. It is an actual security. You can't sell anything you don't own, except for that.
And how are there more stocks being shorted than exist on the market?
Right.
If
the
there's
average,
some kind of naked short selling taking place. Now, I've heard all the explanations. I understand the ways in which that can happen. At the end of the day, it creates the risk that you have the inability to pay back the stock.
And some of the consideration too, Robert, is just perception. The perception it creates, because here we have the Biden administration, and basically everybody and their mother getting together to, sick the government on these people, and by the way, there's word, obviously, the White House was personally involved with shutting down the ability for these people to buy these stocks on these platforms. And even forums, they'll of course be next. They already are, really.
It's not just speech control. It's going to be
it's activity
for political purposes. It's going to be control for economic purposes, cultural purposes, social purposes. You name it.
Now they're denying them the ability to band together and work collaboratively, but it was perfectly fine for the hedge fund and the apps developer to work together. And this really should be a lesson to everybody. And I'm going to repeat this again because I said it, I think it was Friday, but I'm going to say it again. There's really no such thing as a big data guy. I am telling you, you will be terrified by some of the things they know about you. There is no such thing as a free mobile app. You are not paying for it, then you are the product. And I remember selling that trade activity to hedge funds.
I remember during the election season when we were talking about how you can, we have a good sense of what the turnout has been amongst Republicans and Democrats and Trump leaners and Biden voters within these different states. A lot of people on the internet were saying, you're making that up. People don't have, how would they know that information? It's like, pal, I can punch in a couple of keystrokes and tell you what magazines you like to buy.
Absolutely.
What you're not supposed to be buying. Yep. So these
even the channels you watch the most, guys, on your cable box, okay? The subscriptions you have through your cable or satellite dish provider, or what you watch on Netflix, okay? It's everywhere.
All the little IP, all the little addresses you go to on the internet.
Yep. Yeah,
especially if you're using a trackable internet. I mean, why do you think you get advertising for things that you've never even searched for? Based on some activity in your life. So let's say all of a sudden, let's say you get a dog, but you haven't searched for anything on a dog. You haven't posted a photo of a dog, but your little Alexa or your little camera has picked up that you have a dog there. And all of a sudden Google's advertising dog food commercials for you.
Let me show people. Let me show people. I'm going to go in, and this is not even a deep dive. I'm going to show them the consumer files, Robert. Okay, you guys know this. You know what it looks like from the voter files that will pull up. All right, and I hope I don't get yelled at on the vendor for doing this, but here we go. This is why they call me the People's Pundit. All right. Right. Here I just clicked quickly onto micro-targeting. There's a lot of other things, just so you guys can see. There's a lot of other things, tax assessing. I can even do custom searching. There's so much I could look at you with, all right? Look at it. I can look at home market value, your magazine purchases, your merchandise purchases, guys. And this is profiled voters, but I'm actually in the consumer files right now. See, and that's bigger than the voter files. Consumer files are well over 250 million, I think now, and the voter files are a little over 200. Even though, as we've talked about in the past, there is not 200 plus million registered voters. These are duplicate addresses, change of address flags, dead people. It really, Robert, to even get, if you remember when I did the analysis, I got to 180 million, and that was being like ridiculously out of the realm of possible. And they actually got close to that. And I was watching an old show the other day over the weekend. And I said, if it gets to the level we got, that we should be really suspicious about what happens. And I went through and showed people that those records are not real. All right. So I'm just laying that out there, but whatever, like you said, the great legitimate one, I'm going to leave it at that for YouTube algorithm purposes. But everything I could tell, whether you're a small business owner, what your income and net worth is, what you contribute to, guys, look at this. Did you donate to animal welfare causes? Did you donate to arts and culture, charitable institutions, children's issues, environmental wildlife, health issues, international aid, political conservative, politically liberal? It's almost unlimited.
Oh, no doubt. Almost unlimited. And now you add to that the social media files.
Oh my God.
What you've liked, what you've subscribed to, what you've supported, what your comments are. One of the first trials we used this in was a trial against a big bank. And I love suing big banks because I hate big banks. But when we were finished picking the jury and they saw the jury that we had selected, they were so terrified they settled within a couple of days. And how did we pick that jury? Using a lot of this information and intel. Yeah. We knew what they liked, what they didn't like, and what is poor Wells Fargo's lawyer and this venture capitalist, or better known as a vulture capitalist.
Vulture, yeah.
Who had fled the country to avoid taxes, all this jazz, while he's stealing people's homes and businesses. But both their lawyers were sitting there and they saw that jury and they saw the look that jury gave them, and they knew, okay, we're screwed. And so we knew that because of we better understood the life experience of people. This was in Bakersfield. we understood how 2008 was still in their memory 10 years later, and the banks had deceived themselves into thinking otherwise. And then we were able to use this additional information to filter out the ones that were going to be the most intense. And they hated those guys, and they were ready to rock from the beginning. I mean, they hung out and talked with me for like 6 hours after the trial, after the settlement of the case, because they were ready to lynch those boys. Bye-bye banks. They were going to issue some huge judgments and verdicts potentially. So now we had a problem with the judge because the judge didn't want that to happen. So that's why we had to settle.
Yeah.
But all of this data and information is available and accessible in ways people don't understand, to where you can really map somebody out. And people like to think their politics aren't as predictable as they are. Your life experience is the number one driving factor in your political beliefs and how you're likely to respond to a set of events. And all of these behaviors that you've had are indications of where that life experience has taken you politically. And once you add that up together, you can get within a 90, 95, 96% accuracy rate as to how someone's going to vote without ever meeting or talking to them.
Yeah, and that's what we did. And I'm just showing people different data points right here, but that's what we did, guys. I mean, basically using this data, there's called a net promoter score. And it's like, how likely will somebody look at something favorably or unfavorably? And what we basically did is use an algorithm based on belief systems to put it into a sort of net promoter score. So we could put a hypothetical scenario into, like, Robert has this, a client A, and he's asking for this, or she is asking for that. And we run down the scenario to people, and they basically say, they'll tell you, this person in this belief system, in this category, with this demographic and these political beliefs and this life experience, and add it all together and buys this mag, whatever it may be, has a 95% chance of voting with you. I mean, it's
a huge improvement.
It's scary.
We're like, in 2008,
my favorite work,
in the Snipes trial, NPAs. That was my own goal. Just NPAs. Anybody that was refused to register with a party was a potentially decent juror in Snipes. Beyond that, we had much more limited information back then.
It's come a long way,
and had to ask questions and things. But now, what's available? I mean, there's companies that market this, that say, "Hey, we'll give you a precise definition of their beliefs about projected beliefs about a wide range of subjects based on information and it covers about 75 to 80% of the country." There's some people that are off the grid. There's some people that are just slightly off the grid. There are some people that are truly off the grid. It shows you what the off the grid ratio is when there's like nothing about this person anywhere. Never registered, hasn't bought anything, doesn't even show up in utility records, somehow is on a maybe a juror roll someplace because they have a driver's license.
No credit cards.
I'm impressed with those people, because those people managed to. But it's amazing. And if you were mapping this information and understanding the critical role of life experience with 2008 and shaping people's contemporary politics, then you could predict both that something like GameStop would happen, where they would get together and take on Wall Street and win. And you could predict that it would be extremely popular to be on the Wall Street Bets subredditor side of the equation, not to be on the hedge fund side of the equation.
Yeah.
And yet, the Biden administration, now this was a classic case for an early test of the Biden administration's impossible coalition, because its donor base,
absolutely,
and its staffing base are all neoliberal, and its media base are all pro-Wall Street neoliberals who make their money on Wall Street, get support from Wall Street, and like no better example than Janet Yellen, who received $800,000 plus in speaking fees from just one of the hedge funds involved in this GameStop scandal.
She's a woman, Robert. That doesn't matter. She's a woman.
They really think the wokester identity politics it was so amazing. I do like this press secretary because she's accidentally honest. Because it's like, oh, that's an embarrassing question. I'll circle back to that one.
Yeah, at least
that's an embarrassing question. I'll circle back to that one too.
At least Carney knew which ones to sidestep, man.
Exactly. Or hey, by the way, we got this huge corruption scandal that's going to blow up the Biden administration right out of the gate. That Janet Yellen promised to recuse herself in an internal ethics memorandum that she signed, saying she would not be involved and would disqualify herself from any issue implicating any Wall Street company that had given her money within at least, they had to do it within the last year because so many had given money to her over 4 years. They're like, well, then she can't even be Secretary of Treasury. So we'll just make it the last year. And amazingly, she ends up with a conflict with someone that she got money from within the last year.
I know.
And not just any amount of money, over $800,000 for what, one speech?
That
I mean, I
shows
love
you
the neoliberals. Oh, that was a totally deserved fee.
Oh,
Yeah,
come on.
Yeah, you're going to convince ordinary Americans that you got paid $800,000 because people love to hear you talk for 30 minutes? I mean,
she has had a career and her advice is worth something. You're joking, right?
Yeah.
Nobody gets paid in this world that much money for their opinion. They are paid for action and favoritism. Absolutely.
They do the quid pro quo before and after they need the quid pro quo to occur. That's how the quid pro quos work in modern Washington.
Yep.
So you get the quid or you get the quo before or after you're in office, as long as you do the other while you're in office.
That's right.
And so whether it's the quid or the quo, and that's what she's doing here. But you see how corrupt the whole Biden administration's theory of how they can hold together their coalition of working class minorities, working class millennials, and upper middle class neoliberals who actually dominate their staff, who actually dominate the media, who actually dominate their donors, but don't dominate their voters. How they're going to keep that together is woke politics. But what's so great is she made it look so.
That's the plan. That is the plan.
Yes. Okay, we have a big Wall Street scandal. Our Secretary of Treasury took what everyone's going to know as a bribe in order to cover these people up. What are we going to do? Oh, woman. She's a woman. Everything's fine. It's going to be like the mask mandate. It's going to be like, okay, maybe we don't have authority for the CDC to regulate every form of public transit in the entire country. How are you going to get around it? You're going to say one of our key health secretary people is a woman in quotation marks.
Yeah.
And that somehow is going to get you out. Say, hey, maybe that person helped kill a bunch of old people in Pennsylvania.
Whatever.
And maybe that person helped her own mother escape nursing home before she could die.
Yep.
But because she was once a he who now identifies as a she, murder's okay. Just like Wall Street thieving is okay. Because it doesn't matter. That's what I've always described identity politics. It's you keep everybody in the same place on the Titanic. You just make the table look prettier on the first floor, in first class. In first class, you make sure you have enough colorful faces, black and brown and red and yellow and white, and make sure they have enough genders and enough gender identities and enough immigrants. And it doesn't matter that you have the same problem of only a small group of people get to be in first class. And a lot of them are in first class because they're stealing from everybody beneath them. And they're the only ones that are going to get lifeboats when the crash happens.
Yep.
That's all okay because, but look, the other 1% now has a equal percentage of black and brown and women that aren't men and men that aren't women that are both.
So it doesn't matter how many people are left off the ark. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter if 95% are still screwed.
Yeah.
Or 99% are still screwed as long as the 1% looks like America. That's your solution.
And Robert, it's like twisted in this new little world. It's twisted that it's actually still being used. Like this wokeness is being, and look at the mass situation. It's being used to take us back. I was saying to Laura the other day, we had the thing in Michael's that happened. A grown man assaulting a woman with a shopping cart because he didn't like how her mask was on. That guy who I almost wrecked in the grocery store for talking to my wife like that. Grown men, and ironically, I've noticed this, they're beta men, all right, because they would never talk to me like that. And they would never have the courage to. But they're using the wokeness as a justification for basically abusing women. So women had to worry about burning dinner decades ago, all right? And now they have to worry about putting on a mask properly. Look at what happened to Marjorie Greene. If she wasn't streaming that, then Cori Bush would have went on Twitter and lied about that. Really what happened is one of her staffers and then her herself, started abusing her simply for the crime of not putting her mask. She wasn't maskless, like Cori Bush said. She just didn't have it on the right way. And it was scary how much, when the guy was yelling at her, how much he sounded like these guys in the stores. Like, it's okay to talk to a woman like that now. Like, what the hell happened to women's rights, right? It just doesn't matter because wokeness is just
And you know, this is like what Joe says. If somebody gets into trouble, Biden's back there saying, send out the guy that looks like a woman. Send out that'll distract him for a while. You know, I doubt he does the politically correct version of it. No, Joe. The only thing is Joe might get caught sniffing and be like, hold on a second. That's not okay. Never mind. That routine. But the scope to which they believe identity politics can hide all of this. It's like they used to call it waving the bloody shirt. Back after the Civil War,
yes,
in order to cover up railroad corruption and institutionalized corruption, both in the South with the scalawags and all of that, and then in the North and the West with the railroads, they would get into trouble and they would bring out the bloody shirt from the war, whichever side you were on. I was on the Confederate side. I was on the Union side. Look at my bloody shirt from the war. Pretend that we're not stealing from you right now. And that worked for about 20, 30 years, and then it quit working when his fraudulency, the first, got elected and exposed it for the world to witness. And now I think they're completely misguided that they believe that just because in an internal administrative politics, if you were in a corporate HR department or if you were in a university academia department, you could get away with your crimes by hiding behind identity politics.
Yeah.
You can't with the ordinary person. It just doesn't fly with the ordinary person.
No, they're like, wait a minute, what the hell? And by the way, so I can get rid of this just to answer that question. Yes, this is a probability model to predict whether or not your marriage will fail. I'm not kidding. I'm not joking. Marital hardship decile, marital hardship percentile, marital hardship probability. So if I wanted to target either men or women based on their ability not to hold a marriage together, I could do that. And it's literally 40% likely to 100% likely that this person will be divorced. 0% to 30%. It's crazy. And they get this from, it's not just one piece of data that goes into this. There's their data attributes. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. And they put it together to determine what similarities failed marriage individuals with failed marriage, what similarities do they share? And unfortunately, folks, we're very, in some cases, predictable animals, creatures. Yeah. And because we're right, because Laura's right. We're kind of like programmable, Robert, where, we could be put into these routines,
I think Scott Adams calls us like soft robots, something like that.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
And definitely attribute. I mean, from having to do trials, I learned very early on that 80% of the time, the juror, the judge, had made up their mind before I made my argument. Based on their life experience, based on whatever filter or frame they went through. So if I was going to try to get within that 20% and try to persuade them otherwise, or be on the right side of the 80% to begin with, I had to know how to identify those predictable things, because we like to imagine that we make decisions based on the facts and the evidence of either an argument or a trial. It's not just how our brains really operate. We use shortcuts to get to where we need to get to. And that's where, the other utility to all this, aside from exposing the Biden administration, exposing the Republican establishment, showing how deep populism is, showing how creative populism can be. That's what the populist moment is all about. All the different ways ordinary small farmers came to resist the system. We'll be part of that on election law reform. But there's a lot, and we're part of that by bringing you independent data information. That's why you can follow Richard on Locals, People's Pundit, create independent helping support independent technology platforms to be free ultimately from censorship or suppression. Go to People's Pundit Daily, and you can subscribe to the newsletter so you always get that intel information. Independent, insightful, unlike the Benji Shapiros of the world, unlike the establishment folks of the world. That's part of how we play that role. But what GameStop did is they showed ordinary people got all kinds of creative ways to come up with solutions. And it's the capacity to do so. And at the same time, expose all the corruption. Not only the Republican establishment and Democratic establishment hiding out, the media establishment coming up with fake news narrative that this was part of the alt-right or neo. Jimmy Kimmel. Go ahead. Joke. The joke is Jimmy Kimmel. The guy who came up and became popular with the Man Show, openly chauvinistic show where he did racial stereotypes and all of it. And now he's supposed to be Mr. Representative of Moral America on a late night comedy show, which is itself a crock. But it was last night. He blamed the Russians. He said the Russians helped coordinate the GameStop deal. So Russian to his. So what's amazing is everybody, left and right, get to see in live time. Our politicians are a bunch of corrupt hacks, no matter which party they're part of. Our media is a bunch of corrupt hacks, no matter which party they're part of. And we, the people, can seize power in new and creative ways against the most insurmountable odds, against the most impossible adversary than you could ever get, than Wall Street hedge funds, including Stephen A. Cohen himself, notorious for being one of the Gordon Gekko of modern Wall Street. And he lost billions and billions, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
I thought so too. I'm sorry.
And last but not least, wonderful to witness, aside from the alignment of populist left and right, from Jimmy Dore to Alex Jones in response to the whole story, while exposing the fake media people along the way, was getting to see two people who have long lied about how they want to take on Wall Street, be exposed as fake phonies and frauds they are, and Pocahontas herself, Senator Warren, whose first action, she's a longtime corporate lawyer, and I got some potshots on Twitter like, oh, you're a tax lawyer. Yeah, I help people of all economic scales screw the government.
Back.
That's who I'm. When there's redistribution, it comes from really, really rich, powerful government people to my people. By contrast, Elizabeth Warren in a corporate bankruptcy was helping big companies stiff ordinary, everyday people, including pension funds. So totally different ball game, folks. But she comes to the defense of Wall Street right away, once an SEC investigation into the subredditors, and pretends to be defending the employees of GameStop, who's only been able to save their jobs because of these subredditors waging war on these shorts who are basically they were deliberately shorting a business they knew had more value than they were saying it had, because they hoped to sink it with public perception and the size and scale of their short, so they could rob from their carcass.
Record-breaking new again.
Not a weak business, a good business in order to do so. Look at Eric Hunley's Unstructured podcast. He did it with the Wang brothers. I think it's actually pronunciated Wong brothers, spelled W-A-N-G, who talked about how great the stock was a year ago, and they're one of the better stock analysts out there. And I myself am not a financial analyst. Wall Street has not approved me for anything, and I hope it never does. Just FYI. In case the SEC.
Sadly, they have with me. Sadly, I was in the club for a while.
It's all, but that theory of their authority is always a bunch of crap. But I've challenged it in different contexts, and we got good settlements, so I've never had to fight it all the way through. But their idea that they have authority over anything and everything just because somebody is giving financial advice is ludicrous. The SEC's authority is supposed to be limited to those trading actual securities.
Those actually on the
not anybody who has an opinion about Wall Street. It's been used as just like Biden administration is trying to use the CDC to regulate what you wear as medical Sharia law on your local public bus. I'm sure the Biden administration will try to use the SEC to crack down on independent speech that challenges and exposes Wall Street, because the director of compliance at the SEC right now is Peter Strzok's wife. Gives you an idea for how small world this is.
Let me play something real quick by Laura Unger, because when Elizabeth Warren made the call for the SEC to come out and regulate, they were debating it on Squawk Box. Okay. And a former commish at the SEC, her name's Laura Unger. This is what she equated it to, Robert. This is nuts.
It really puts a lot of question about the integrity of the market. Right. And it really kind of, everybody's scratching their heads over this. What should happen? What is the right thing to do to control this or stop this? Not unlike what we saw on January 6th at the Capitol. Right. If you don't have the police in there at the right time, things go a little crazy. And that's kind of feels like what's happening with this. Much different, much lesser degree. It's financial harm, not personal bodily harm. But certainly that's the same kind of platform created frenzy that people are operating under. And these are very trying times.
Indeed they are, Miss Unger. Yes. Indeed they are. That's crazy.
For the royalty anymore. They don't bow when I walk in. They don't curtsy when I go to the table. They don't happily give me their money. And whenever they come up with a way to take my money that I stole from them back, by golly, we got to stop that. That's out of hand. That's
the hell back in the corner. Get back in the corner where you belong.
Exactly. I gave you that pitchfork so you could go make me some more hay. I didn't give you that pitchfork so you could take me on.
Right.
And they're shocked, just like the royal class of Washington was shocked by the riots ever reaching the Capitol. They are shocked that ordinary everyday people could exercise their lawful right and remedy to use the free market and leverage their collective individual power against the people that have been busy stealing from all of us for decades.
Yep.
And then the next great expose after Elizabeth Pocahontas Warren, I'll never have to listen to her anytime any lefty praises her in the future, I'll give him the GameStop story. Say, here it shows you that what a total fraud she is. And you don't take my word for it. Jimmy Dore said the same thing on the left.
Bernie has always been
Glenn Greenwald said the same thing. Matt Taibbi said the same thing.
That was the moment, Robert. That was the moment. Bernie has always been bend over Bernie. He always has been. He is not a champion, never was. But Elizabeth Warren, from admissions in college to corporate lawyer days, she is a fraud. She has been willing and able to make, to take a Periscope beer with a Liz, kind of fraudulent thing to something on a much grander scale. And to answer 3 questions in one real quick. And I'll segue this to Rob. I'm going to kick this to you, Robert. But I see 3 questions. One about the future, about seats in the party. The other about progress being made in the Republican Party. And then the shuffling of Trump's team, the legal team. I'm going to kick all these out. I will tie these all together right now and then kick it to Robert, because a lot of this is going to go like the direction people like Robert and I and Laura got to go. We really have to wait, like Robert said before, to how this impeachment plays out, because that will dictate, how, what direction we go here. And Robert, what do you think about the shuffling? And you can say what you're going to say first too, but what do you think about the shuffling of Trump's team and the difference in strategy? Apparently,
give it the right move. He got gaslit after January 6th into believing that the whole country had turned on him, that he was going to be removed, permanently disbarred from office, and that they were going to use the conviction to then criminally prosecute him and maybe also his family on the grounds that he was responsible for everything that happened at the Capitol. So he thought that he was going to be bankrupted and imprisoned unless he played their game, and that he was at risk of political ruin in general. Yeah. So he partially believed it because people around him, this is partially his own fault, of course, but people around, because some of them, he put some of these key people there, were misleading him about this. And he saw William Barr, that fraud, that phony, maybe worst attorney general ever, up there with Eric Holder.
Yep. And Sessions, because at least, Sessions never tried to play the tough guy. At least he knew.
Sessions would have played this part very differently. Yeah. It's where if Trump could have come to terms with Mueller or the Sessions screw up on Mueller, Sessions would have been much more loyal down the stretch. Sessions probably would have outed the Hunter Biden investigation. Sessions probably would have prosecuted people connected to Spygate. Sessions might have gone further. But he did believe in the integrity of the system, whereas Barr only believed in protecting the appearance of the integrity.
Clearly.
But he has Barr attacking him. He has all these other people attacking him. Mitch McConnell trying to wage war on him. So he came to believe that this best of defense was what Lindsey Graham told him, which was hire Lindsey Graham's people. Those original lawyers were Lindsey Graham's people, not Trump's people. And that he was going to limit his defense to solely the issue of, hey, let's move on. I'm no longer in office. There really isn't authority for you to impeach me now anyway, because I'm not in office, without making a big deal out of it. But just that issue, very short presentation, straight up and down vote, move on, end it along the way. Some of us have been saying they're bluffing, that they do not have 17 votes. If they do have 17 votes, now is the time to find out, because now is the time to kill the Republican Party, if that's the case. To use it as the rallying cry to crush it. Let's not find it out 2 or 4 years later, like we kind of did under Trump, with what does a Paul Ryan agenda look like? It looks like a disaster for the Republican Party. What does a Mitch McConnell executive and judicial agenda look like? At least partially a disaster for the Republican Party.
Goodbye, Midwest. Goodbye.
Yeah, exactly. No doubt. And so let's find out now. Let's put it to the test. But my view was they don't have it. They don't have enough politically suicidal members. They've seen the same polls that I've seen, which show there's been no movement, no massive decline in Trump support. In fact, no decline in Trump support. In fact, interestingly enough, in a lot of these polls, more Biden voters approve of him now than did at the time at January 5th. Whatever that means. It's probably your occupied type, some of those types.
That's there has to be a home for these people, because it's not under a Biden administration. Marxist internal contradictions. It popped up faster than I thought they were going to pop up. I mean, incredible.
Yeah. With rapid speed. They really believe, because of living in Twitter world the last 4 years,
Yes.
that wokesterism can keep these people at bay. And that leads us, by the way, I'll get back to these questions just briefly. The other person wonderfully exposed in all this was AOC. So the reality is, if you look at it, prior to a certain person coming on as her campaign manager and her chief of staff for a period of time, AOC had no social media presence. She wasn't an effective organizer, wasn't a successful rally person, didn't have a big YouTube channel, wasn't any kind of intellectual, wasn't a policy person. She was nobody. This campaign manager created the AOC. That what he recognized was the populist appetite that was out there and how social media tools could reach him. And he created her, and he did a fantastic job. But about a year in, Pelosi understood who her real threat was, demanded AOC fire him. Yep. AOC did. From that point forward, AOC has not been able to replicate any of it. And what AOC really is now is just a social clout chaser. That's all she is. So she tags on to whatever's popular with social clout. And Ted Cruz accidentally exposed her by just saying, sure, I'll work with you to change this. And then she's like, oh, no, but the social clout's supposed to be mine. I'm supposed to be pop. This is a high school mindset and mentality. Like Tulsi Gabbard said,
very much.
And then she says, oh, but Ted Cruz, he tried to have me murdered. Led to Babylon Bee having a front headline. Ted Cruz does finger guns at AOC. She falls down saying that she might be dead. It's a crock. AOC made a joke out of herself. She had this perfect opportunity to inherit the mantle of Bernie Sanders. I think bend over Bernie is the right language.
Yeah, man.
The thing with bend over Bernie is the establishment didn't even have to drop the soap to get him to bend.
No,
so, that's what's bad about it.
He threw it down for them, Robert. Yes. Oh my God!
All they had to do was click their fingers. Scare them to do so. But here's a perfect opportunity on the Democratic Party left to grab the mantle of the Bernie Sanders left populism. 2/3 of which elected Obama and ended up bitterly disappointed by Obama.
Absolutely.
That's why Hillary had such a hard time with this no-name senator from Vermont, this sort of curmudgeonly professor guy. Well, a large part of that was that the desire was so deep to challenge institutional Democratic politics. Perfect opportunity to seize it. And instead, not only does Warren get on the wrong side, but AOC manages to blow it up right in the process. Yeah. And it means that who's the Democrat smartly advocating on this side? Especially all of them are doing it in the social media space. The smart populist left intellectual leaders on the policy side, on the PR side, on the press side, and the social media side, the Glenn Greenwalds, the Matt Taibbi's, the Jimmy Dores, to some extent Tim Pool, because he goes back and forth. All of them were all over this. They understood the consequence right away. And the only people who don't are all the people in Washington pretending to fight Wall Street and the 1%. The problem is the donors come from that 1%. The media comes from that 1%.
Absolutely.
Their staffers come from that 1%. Yeah. And a lot of them have their stocks tied up in those same Wall Street companies.
Absolutely. A great interview with Jimmy Dore on this. And you can watch it on YouTube, but also too, I get Greenwald's Substack. I think it's Substack. When he left, I admired, because it's hard, especially when you have a family. It's hard to make that kind of decision. Listen, I can't work here anymore. I co-founded this paper. They are censoring me. I have to, put principle over career, and I got to go. And to do something like that takes a lot of guts. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to give him that, because if more people, let's say Glenn is successful in doing that, then maybe more people have the courage to act the same way.
Matt Taibbi's on there. Jordan Schachtel's on there.
Jordan's a fantastic one too.
The future is folks are used to paying without their knowledge for a lot of this content that actually undermine the quality of that content, undermine their access to it, manipulated them in the minds of other people with the algorithmic manipulations that they were co-complicit and participant in. What happens when Twitter's no longer around when we're not all on Twitter, when we're not all on YouTube, when we're not all on Facebook, but we're at Locals, we're at Substack, we're on Rumble. what happens is all those algorithmic manipulations go away because none of these places do that. Now, the downside to you as an individual is you think, well, I'm paying $5 a month. If I do it for 10 people, I'm paying $50 a month. That's still less than your cable bill used to be. And more importantly, it's a lot less than you actually were paying without you knowing you were paying.
Yeah.
And you're able to better achieve what you care about, not only more informed by self-curational capabilities, by monetizing, requiring you to make a monetary decision connected to what content you focus on and what content creators you choose to support and prioritize. But it also makes sure that other people aren't subject and susceptible to various forms of algorithmic manipulation because they're no longer looking for that content on those entities and social media enterprises that are engaged in that mass manipulation.
Yeah, you're taking their exposure away. You're taking away their exposure to misinformation, misdirection, downright psyops at this point.
Exactly.
I mean, that is what is going on in this country,
No
folks.
doubt.
There is no doubt. And some great work on that too. How even just Google alone, one search engine alone. That's why we're making the plans we are making. Once we're done and we're over to Wirecast, I don't need Google anymore. The polling stuff is gone now because there was a cloud-based. Most polling, especially phone, is on premise, right? But you need Windows stuff and it's a pain in the butt. So you try to get it cloud. And for some reason, everyone designed this crap to work with Google Chrome. And they box you in a corner. So it took us a while, but now we're like moving away from that. And once no offense to StreamYard, I wish you the best, but once we're gone, that's it. We don't need them anymore at all, Robert. I mean, really, people have to come to terms with this is what it's going to take. Yeah. This is what it's going to take.
Mini versions of what the GameStop traders did.
Yeah.
In a whole bunch of different industries.
Yeah.
The key was the GameStop folks were willing to say, I may lose my whole little savings account. And, it may be little to other people, but it's everything to me. $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, some people 10 or 20,000. Because I know that this is important to make, to protect a business I care about, to take on the hedge funds, to get some balance. Now, it turns out in the process, a lot of them are going to get ridiculously rich because they really hammered the shorts. And the shorts are just having to write check after check after check to these guys. Yeah, one of the most extraordinary free market redistributions in American economic history since the days of Andrew Jackson.
Yep. Way more successful than any government program, I might add.
Oh, by a long mile. The people that are paying are exactly the people that should be paying, because it's not just people with disparate resources, but it's people who have used those disparate resources to bad ends and often obtain those disparate resources by bad means.
Robert, when all these calamities happen, they don't lose the money. They don't get crushed. Of course, once in a while, someone's head has to go on a stick like Lehman Brothers did or something like that. But I mean, for the most part,
there's a few people you'll throw over to make sure the rest of you can get out in the lifeboats.
Yes. And you know what? That's why.
Well, the rest of the people drown.
That's why, for what it's worth, I actually have some respect. Well, not some. I mean, I have respect for somebody like a Jamie Dimon who didn't want any part in it because he was like, listen, this is what we do. This is what we chose to do. And if you're going to be a big boy, you got to get caught with your pants down once in a while. Right. After one, every time this cycle happens, somebody gets culled. That's it. That's the game we played. And I don't want to take your money. He didn't want the government's money. He didn't want it. And you got to give him credit at least because he understood the consequences. You know what? We're going to bet. We're going to win sometimes. We're going to lose sometimes. They got taken this time. And you read some of those, what Robert was saying before, guys, I did. You read some of those forums, if you can get screenshots of the ones that haven't been removed. It's just, I read one. He got crushed. Well, I guess it was the financial crisis. He's not talking about COVID. He hadn't taken his wife to dinner in like 4 years. And he was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take my wife to dinner. That's it. I'm going to pay off some credit card bills and I'm going to take my wife to dinner. And that is nice to be able to do.
These guys use the new technology of subreddits in the social media space for a populist purpose, aggregated their individual capital to make a meaningful difference using the Robinhood app that was meant to screw them against the system. And Robinhood's now colluding.
The name was a fraud. Yeah.
Yeah, no question whatsoever. We'll see that those cases will go forward one shape or form or another in one jurisdiction or another. Rewrote the script of how Wall Street can work for ordinary people against the system.
Yep.
And at the same time, and then they were great at like using memes, and they were great at the political narrative around it, explaining why they did. But part of the key part was they're willing to risk everything they had to make their point, to achieve their objective. And as long as you're willing to risk substantial amounts, that's when you can get real rewards politically, socially, culturally, economically. In terms of power, it's what Trump figured out that if I put everything on the table in terms of this impeachment trial, then politically I put all of them more at risk than I am. And I'm willing to take whatever risk is present, but that maximizes the reward. Why not get the chance to he got no court hearing, no case that Trump brought got an evidentiary hearing anywhere. No case that Trump brought was ever heard on the merits anywhere.
No, there was no place for recourse, Robert.
Exactly. So why not take it to the Senate and then say they want to say that him talking about the election was a bad faith action that incited the response to the Capitol Hill on the 6th. He should say no. It was a good faith constitutional basis that this institution failed to deliver on, using this as a pretext, but had previously historically completely embraced this remedy in past elections, including some of the people that are leading the impeachment effort.
Mike and others are right. They should put it on trial. And you can do, it's like always with the fake, with the establishment, they're fake choices. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can argue that this is unconstitutional and still put the whole damn thing on trial. You can do both. And Tim Kaine is already like asking Chuck Schumer, by the way, there's a couple of them. Can't we just do a censure? I mean, we've never impeached a president. Nobody's ever impeached a president after he left office. So I'm not comfortable with this. So just expose it all. Just you can walk and chew gum at the same time. And Sabrina, it was kind of answered, but is Biden getting involved in Myanmar? Here's the thing. Everybody from the world community in the Western allied world is doing a condemnation, but they're not doing a damn thing. And this could never have happened without the blessing of China. Read China's statements, and you'll see it were like double speak of the highest order. They don't even forget about condemning. They don't even name any party specifically the coup.
They were scared of Trump.
Yeah,
so they stayed away from messing with Taiwan.
That's right.
They stayed away from this kind of thing in Myanmar. They stayed away from being too aggressive with the Muslim minority group that they've been targeting already.
Yeah,
and all three they've unleashed since Trump is gone.
Absolutely.
I mean, they were arrogant enough for their embassy to say bye-bye Trump on Inauguration Day.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is China is going to now show the world we believe Joe Biden is our boy, and we're going to make sure the world knows he's our boy, and we're going to give you some examples. We'll fly air jets right over his carriers and right over Taiwan. He won't do nothing. We'll do what we're going to do with the Muslim minority. He won't do nothing. We'll mock your prior president on your Inauguration Day. Biden won't do nothing. And we'll allow military coups in neighboring countries, and Biden will do nothing. Yeah, they're going to keep accelerating.
He's involved, whether he wants to be involved or not, because in truth, he's really the reason.
Now,
let me
be clear. I don't think we have any business going there.
No, but they wouldn't do it, Robert, if they felt like there were repercussions.
Because Trump was Trump. He curated this image of Andrew Jackson. Also did that. Maybe he's crazy enough to do whatever, whenever.
Yeah.
If he's willing to talk about Rocket Boy on Twitter with a guy that's got nuclear weapons, who knows what he'll do.
Listen,
and of course, what Trump would have done is he would have used it as a pretext to hammer them economically more.
That's right.
Which protect American markets more. And he figured out what their real weakness was. Yeah. You notice North Korea started de-escalating the rhetoric as Trump started escalating tariffs because they realized Trump will use anything North Korea does as additional pretext. He'd set that up well to do more economic tariffs, saying, I got to do it for safety, security reasons, which would be great for our economy. And that's the other thing, goes all the way back to what little side script, what happened on as the GameSpot will not be a one-off.
No, I agree.
They figured it out. Just do the math, folks. Do 20 million people with an average of at least $5,000 a month, $5,000 that they have available to invest at any given time in the stock market. You do the math on that, and you figure out they're as big as half the hedge funds combined.
Yeah.
So it's a different ball game. They figured out how to use it. And the short squeeze is the easiest profit path. As long as you hold that line, as long as you never forget, never forgive, and hold that line, they're going to have to buy that stock at some key point, and they're going to give you huge profits to do so. I mean, on GameStop, they're getting as much as a 200 rate of return. And some of these companies borrowed to get into that position in the first place. Not only they borrow the stock, sometimes they had additional leverage to even borrow the stock. So they're just going to be writing check after check after check. And it may make the short game a very difficult game to play for hedge funds going forward. I guarantee you they're looking at every position where they have a short over 40 or 50% of available stock.
No doubt.
And are now scared and nervous about what's going to happen. So so these boys are going to have some fun for a while. And you have billionaires like Elon Musk and others who have always wanted to wage war on the shorts. As he called it, time to get shorty. And
they're going after him too. They're going after him too, Robert.
They have for years. Trying to sink Tesla before it could get off the ground, mostly in disingenuous bad faith.
Yeah.
And so the lies they spread about him. I mean, that's how that game is played. It's the political game just on Wall Street, where they put out some BS hit pieces, fake weaponized prosecutions, bogus lawsuits, bogus legal. It's all the same thing. Watch the show Billions. You can watch it in live time. Because that's what they're narrating. They're talking. The whole show was inspired by Stephen Cohen.
Yeah, they're using that BS complaint from that woman to use the Justice Department, and this is something that always really what Trump and Republicans never understood about how Democrats use especially the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department to attack their political enemies. And people are, oh, well, two wrongs don't make a right. Two wrongs don't. Well. Sometimes there are legitimate reasons to do that. In this case, of course, come on, let's be real. He criticized Biden. For people who also don't know this, Donald Trump, if he's remembered, if Joe Biden doesn't destroy it, Donald Trump will probably be remembered in the distant future as someone who did great things for humanity with space. And lunar launch pad has been a dream of NASA forever. They want to build a launch pad on the moon because they want to be able to go back and forth to Mars much easier. And Biden signaled that he would kill it. Elon Musk publicly, but also privately, was like, here we go again. Barack Obama 2.0. This guy he's small brain idiot, cannot realize the importance this is to humanity. You know, like these Donald Trump did two things very important. He gave them that dream and gave them the money to do it. And then also gave them the money to put that new telescope, which allows us to look at blue planets beyond the atmosphere because it clouds how we see planets. It's a pain in the butt. And we can't do new methods of locating planets. And we're locating all these damn planets, Robert. I mean, think about those two things alone, what they mean for someone's legacy. And along comes Joe Biden. Elon Musk has something to say about it, and the Justice Department miraculously opens up an investigation. I mean, it's unbelievable. This is like these people make Richard Nixon look like a Boy Scout. I mean,
Richard Nixon wanted to do things that these guys actually do, and then some. It's a frightening time in that perspective, but it reflects the fundamental institutional weakness of where everything is at.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's GameStop to show people what Robert and I are talking about here. You can see it rocketed up. The high, let's see, we can go down right now. It's such a the day high is 322, the low is 212, the 52 high is 483. I mean, it goes to show how volatile stock has been here. I mean, just a massive gain. If you look at
they're beating the shorts at their own game.
Yeah,
because I mean the for those who don't know, because the shorts sometimes have to buy when it hits a certain price, sometimes they have to buy within a certain time frame, depending on the nature of the contract. When they're seeing that they're losing money at an exponential rate, they have to come in and buy, and what that does is it creates even more price inflation.
Yeah,
and so that the whole key is what keeps it alive is as long as the people that have bought on the Reddit board and the rest hold those stocks and won't sell them, then they're creating a perfect seller's market to have that price continue to skyrocket.
And this is with manipulation, Robert. Look at the price holding
with all the things meant to drive it down. they still haven't been able to get it down anywhere near where they needed it to be to salvage any kind of losses from it, because they're always going to get hammered. But the scope and scale to which they were going to get hammered is just amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's the best populist revolution on Wall Street maybe ever.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything comparable to it. And somebody said, look at the volume. Yeah, look at that volume slowing down. You can see here, guys, this is the manipulation. So you have on the 27th, first of all, it started before, but on the 27th, you just see massive buying at around 9:30 a.m., before the market opened, because this was like set in stone, right? And then look at all the red. That's volume. And you can see the impact of the Biden administration making calls and telling people to stop the market. All right. So do not give the other end of the trade any opportunity. So if you want to be able to buy more, there's no one to buy it from. The only thing you could do is sell, which drives the price down. You could, Robert, look at that graph. I mean, you could see government manipulation. It's so clear. That's why I love data visualizations.
The whole thing with this was they could stop them from buying, but they couldn't force them to sell.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing with the volume is that they're holding that line.
Yeah.
All those people that bought that week that's on there with the big spikes of green, there's very few spikes of red because they're refusing to sell.
Yeah.
So because they're holding, and especially I love the fact that they borrowed the hold the line imagery. So you had like Braveheart hold the line speeches.
Yeah.
These other, the 300 movie hold the line series, and they even had Joe Biden being the Egyptian king or the Ottoman king trying to invade Sparta, and they did the whole scene with throwing the spear at him and all the rest, except the spear was Steven Crowder did one where he was coming back as that. Apparently he's suing Facebook, but I haven't read what the story is yet. But yeah, it's what this is they really thought they could break these guys, and they can't break them.
Yeah.
And as long as they continue to hold, they're stuck in a bad position, because the few other people that have stocks are just going to let, maximize their value on it. There's too many of the Redditors, too many of the ordinary people have stock, aren't willing to sell. It leaves them stuck. So they were able to stop the increase to 1,000 that Elon Musk was trying to help engineer, but they couldn't bring it back to $4 where they need to make a profit.
Yeah, and that goes against, you can see, and just again, real quick, so people know what I'm talking about, but you can see the attempt to manipulate and increase selling, and then that's mixed with good old-fashioned bargain selling, right? So, I made a profit. I'm going to profit take. I'm going to take some profit now, and those are other people who had maybe different diverse investments, fund managers that are not, shorting the stock. They're just, they were trading it. So, wow, it went to 400. Let's shift our position now. I don't think we can do much better in GameStop this year. Let's shift our. So it's those people are, for the most part, absolutely holding the line, and that's why even today, which was a real push, it only fell 30%. Now I know that sounds like a lot, but that's 30% for the day. It's not,
after it's already gone up 1,000%.
Yeah, so we're not exactly, man. We're talking about a stock that should be nowhere near. The low today was 225. The high was 229, and it closed at 227. So I'm sorry, actually, it's this time period. So that's the 5-day. Over 5 days, Robert, it fell 30%. That's it. So that's a
and they,
problem
immediately. Initially, when Robinhood first did their shutdown, they got it all the way down to about $100.
Yeah,
and they found other ways to come in to hold the line, and all of a sudden it went back up and stabilized. And it's extraordinary to watch. There's some people that have been in huge debt that are buying their mom's homes. A few of them did sell it, which is fine, but most have managed to hold the line, knowing that these shorts are going to have to take it in the shorts. And it's a beautiful thing to witness for ordinary people, beautiful thing to watch the hedge funds have to deal with, and extraordinarily revelatory as to what's really happening in the populist spirit in America, that it's Trump independent, though Trump assisted and enabled, but independent of and not dependent on Trump, that the Republican establishment is a bunch of fools, the Democratic establishment is a bunch of fools, the so-called Democratic populists are all a bunch of frauds, and that the left populist alignment is real and viable and came into play right away. You didn't have to write a script between Jimmy Dore and Alex Jones to get
No.
the exact same thing on the exact same day in response to this. And it shows populism is here to stay. And if anything, it's going to find new, creative, inventive ways to rebel. And it's the future is bright despite the dark clouds that may surround it right now.
That's a great place to leave it. We could leave it there. Federalist has a great article on that, by the way. I was, that basically it's ingenuity, that, it's incredible to watch these people, these aggrieved, these abused is a better word. This abused class finding ways, new and creative ways to fight back against a system that is totally rigged against them. Only the media is allowed to disseminate and manipulate information. Only the government is allowed to tell people what they can and cannot do. Only Wall Street can make money. I mean, it's totally, and only K Street can manipulate elections. I mean, so, it's really, it's incredible to watch these new things develop. It's not going to go. You know what? I think you said something earlier, and I'll leave it with this, but I think you said this earlier. Without Trump, there's no voice to it. So it's like it could be unchained. It's not tamed in any way. It's not directed. There was like at least this group of people felt like they could put their force into one man and he would like point the beam and shoot, Now it's just like they have all these other beams that could start springing out of nowhere. And they got incoming coming at. It took a week for Joe Biden's coalition, despite the bogus media polls. It took a week, man, for it to start crack. That's it. 1 week.
Exactly. It shows the power still remains with the people when they collectively act through their individual will. And sort of my wrap up is just remember, never forget, never forgive, and hold the line.
There it is. And that's it. So don't forget, guys, to check out Robert on Locals, him and Viva Fry. Viva Fry makes some great videos, man. I got to tell you. He makes some
VivaBarneslaw.locals.com. VivaBarneslaw.locals.com.
There you go. And you know where to find me, guys. Also, Robert is still on Twitter. So am I. But we're not even going to promo those puppies anymore. I'll tell you that, right? I mean, Locals is, I'm having a blast. And last thing but not least, don't forget, you still subscribe to the channel. As long as we're here, we're here. But, we love you for it. All right. And Sabrina, last one. Yes, I do think the Republican establishment will try to choose their nominee again, the way the Democrats do. And the Democrats were not always like that. Republicans were always like that. And I think in the end, they will try to pivot back. Sadly, if I had to make a prediction now, I'd say the Republicans will not learn this lesson. And this will come to a head. Just from, my conversations with people, they seem incapable of learning. I'm serious. So with that, right, we're going to leave it at that. Anything else you want to add, Robert?
Nope.
Okay.
I think that covers it.
No, Robert, again, man, a great show. Thanks for joining us today. All the best, folks. Don't miss Inside the Numbers, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. All the best, folks. All the best.
Shine down over dotted lines of white across an open highway. Restless nights, coffee houses, clubs, and neon lights. I rock the people my way, working my way, coming back to you. Working my way, coming back. Take me home tonight, not wasting it. Overdrive from town to town, and in between I see you in the morning light. New York, Boston, Philly.